Senator Collins, thanks for coming in.
It's a great pleasure, thank you.
This ship that was involved in the incident off Western Australia this week...
Yeah, the one the front fell off?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not very typical. I'd like to make that point.
Well, how is it untypical?
Well, there are a lot of these ships going around the world all the time, and very seldom does anything like this happen. I just don't want people thinking that tankers aren't safe.
Was this tanker safe?
Well, I was thinking more about the other ones.
The ones that are safe?
Yeah, the ones the front doesn't fall off.
Well, if this wasn't safe, why did it have 80,000 tonnes of oil on it?
Well, I'm not saying it wasn't safe. It's just perhaps not quite as safe as some of the other ones.
Why?
Well, some of them are built so the front doesn't fall off at all.
Well, wasn't this built so the front wouldn't fall off?
Well, obviously not.
How do you know?
Well, because the front fell off and 20,000 tonnes of crude oil spilled into the sea caught fire. It's a bit of a giveaway. I just like to make the point that that is not normal.
Well, what sort of standards are these oil tankers built to?
Oh, very rigorous maritime engineering standards.
What sort of thing?
Well, the front's not supposed to fall off for a start.
And what other things?
Well, there are regulations governing the materials that they can be made of.
What materials?
Well, cardboard's out.
And?
No cardboard derivatives.
Like paper?
No paper. No string, no sellotape.
Rubber?
No, rubber's out. They've got to have a steering wheel. There's a minimum crew requirement.
What's the minimum crew?
Oh, one, I suppose.
So the allegations that they're just designed to carry as much oil as possible, the hell with the consequences, I mean, that's ludicrous.
Absolutely ludicrous. These are very, very strong vessels.
So what happened in this case?
Well, the front fell off in this case, by all means, but it's very unusual.
But Senator Collins, why did the front book fall off?
Well, a wave hit it.
A wave hit it?
A wave hit the ship.
Is that unusual?
Oh, yeah. At sea, chance in a million.
So what do you do to protect the environment in cases like this?
The ship was towed outside the environment.
Into another environment?
No. It's been towed beyond the environment. It's not in the environment.
No, but from one environment to another environment.
No, it's beyond the environment. It's not in an environment. It has been towed beyond the environment.
Well, what's out there?
Nothing's out there.
Well, there must be something out there.
There is nothing out there. All there is sea and birds and fish.
And?
And 20,000 tonnes of crude oil.
And what else?
And a fire.
And anything else?
And the part of the ship that the front fell off. But there's nothing else out there.
Senator Collins, thanks for joining us.
It's a complete void.
Yeah.
CBS News. UPS plane engine fell off during crash in Louisville, NTSB official says. A UPS cargo plane's left wing caught fire and an engine fell off and crashed just before it exploded after takeoff from Louisville International Airport in Kentucky, a federal investigator said Wednesday. There was a fire in the plane's left wing and the engine detached during takeoff on Tuesday, said Todd Inman, a member of the National Transportation Safety Board, which is leading the investigation. There are a lot of different parts of this airplane in a lot of different places, Inman said during a news conference describing the debris that stretched a half mile. The plane with 3 people on board crashed around 5:15 p.m. Eastern Time on Tuesday as it was departing for Honolulu from UPS Worldport at Louisville International. Video showed flames of the plane's left wing and trails of smoke. The plane lifted off and gained enough altitude to clear the fence at the end of runway 17R. Shortly after clearing that fence, it made impact with structures in the terrain off the airport property. Inman said the plane's black boxes, the cockpit voice recorder and the flight data recorder, were recovered by the NTSB investigators on Wednesday afternoon. He said the black box suffered from some heat around it, not intrusion, but added the recorders are built for that. We feel comfortable once we get these to our lab in DC that we'll be able to get a good readout of the applicable data, Inman said. And we will be yet another point of information that will really help us understand what happened during this point of flight. Alex, how was your week this week so far? Are you with us, sir? Oh no, Alex.
I've been hit by the unpressable mute button, where for all space users, you have to minimize the space and then mute yourself with the minimize space because its mute button works. Hello, Gator.
Oh, all right. So
I maintain that it's Elon trying to silence my voice, but you know how it goes.
It's very possible you are one of his harshest critics.
Absolutely.
Well, we've had an intro here for the last few weeks asking people to give us a rating on Spotify to try to help us beat Chelsea Clinton's podcast. And I have some positive news. It's not a complete and total success, but as of the last time I looked, they had 26 ratings with an average of 2.3 stars, and we have 13 ratings with an average of 5 stars. So our trajectory is pretty good to soon beat Chelsea Clinton's podcast on Spotify. So
we're losing to Chelsea Clinton on popularity. I think that's the clear message.
Well, no. We are losing on enthusiasm to give ratings, but we are beating her in the ratings, you see.
Right, okay.
So the metrics are good. The metrics are positive.
Keep it coming, people.
That's right.
We are so excited and focused on the metrics that I had no idea about how they were going until this very moment, which is great. Thank you, all 13 of you. Yeah.
Well, hey, listen. She has a fully funded and advertised podcast, and she only got 26. So the fact that we were able to just ask politely for 13 people to give us a rating is actually pretty good results, I think.
The venerable Half Clinton. Yes, let's go. What's up this week? What happened? Something about a plane falling off or something.
Well, yes. The engine just fell off of the plane. That's what happened with the plane crash this week. The engine just fell off. That happens sometimes. Well, we also have an update here.
One of Boeing's engineering marvels, or just an independent?
I mean, they're still doing the investigation, and they got the black box, and they'll get
don't
back
know
to us
who
on
it
what
is.
they see. But
Okay.
we have some more updates from news that we've covered last week here.
No! Wait! I'll tell.
I knew it would work. All right, give it to me.
The combination is 1,
1,
2,
2,
3,
3,
4,
4,
5.
5. So the combination is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's the stupidest combination I ever heard in my life. That's the kind of thing an idiot would have on his luggage. Thank you, Your Highness. Well, did it work? Where's the key? It worked, sir. We have the combination. Great. What's the combination? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Yes.
That's amazing. I've got the same combination on my luggage.
So last week we had a story, and Alex had criticized my pronunciation of the main object in question. So we're going to have a Frenchman correct me with my pronunciation here.
We are looking at how to pronounce the name of this famous museum located in Paris, France. This is in fact the world's largest art museum, and this is also a historic monument in the capital city of France, Paris. So how do you go about pronouncing this with the typical French pronunciation? Louvre. Le musée du Louvre. But in English or American, it'd be fine to say Louvre Museum. Louvre Museum. In French, le Louvre, le musée du Louvre.
Tom's Hardware. The
Louvre,
heist reveals museum used
Louvre,
as password for its video surveillance. Still has workstations with Windows 2000. Glaring security weaknesses revealed in previous report. The recent heist at the
Louvre,
in which jewelry worth around 88 million euros was stolen from the museum in broad daylight, has revealed glaring weaknesses in the museum's security systems, according to the French publication Libération. A security audit by French National Agency for the Security Information Systems in 2014 reported that the museum's video surveillance system password was
Louvre.
The same audit revealed that another system built by defense and cybersecurity company Thales used Thales as its access credentials. Additionally, the museum automation network also used computers that were equipped with Windows 2000 operating systems, making them vulnerable as Microsoft stopped support for Windows 2000 in 2010. Another security audit, by this time the National Institute for Advanced Studies in Security and Justice, was executed the following year and completed in 2017. This more in-depth report revealed additional weaknesses in both physical and digital security, noting the same issues raised in the previous report, namely the use of obsolete systems and password vulnerabilities. Both reports were stamped confidential, and rightly so, as they exposed significant vulnerabilities. And if you're wondering if these problems were addressed in the 8 years since the last audit, Libération did some more digging and discovered the museum was still running outdated operating systems in 2021. Coincidentally, the
Louvre
underwent another security audit earlier this year, although that audit's findings have yet to be revealed. That said, a person in charge of the review told the French Senate that the museum's systems needed to be truly modernized. The museum curator also said, "What I can testify to is that the
Louvre
management was fully aware of not of the weaknesses, but of the need for a fresh look at the security system of the entire museum. Although the museum's poor cybersecurity practices are not necessarily responsible for the recent heist, these audits reveal systemic deficiencies in how the
Louvre
handles security in general. Hopefully, this will be a wake-up call that spurs the administration to implement the recommendations security experts have been making for apparently over a decade." So that is the That is the update on the heist at the
Louvre.
And I appreciate Mr. Frenchy Frenchman for helping me with the pronunciation. Alex, are you with us this time? Oh, dear me.
There we are. Oh, hello. I'm back.
Yay. Okay. So did you miss our update on the
Louvre.
Oh, yes, I heard that. Very good work, Gator. This is what we call out of the box thinking there on the pronunciation issue. Well, we finally have the answer, Gator. If you were wondering what could be possibly worse than using Windows 2000 for all your security systems, you could use come on, drop the soundbite.
Louvre.
As your password. There you go.
So there was a second article from The Guardian.
Louvre.
Heist is a deafening wake-up call, says auditor. The spectacular theft of an estimated 88 million euros of crown jewels from the Louvre last month was a deafening wake-up call for the wholly inadequate pace of security upgrades at the Paris Museum, the head of France's state auditor has said. Presenting the report, which was completed before the dramatic heist at the world's most visited museum, Pierre Moscovici said the Louvre had sufficient funds for its improvements and must now implement them without fail. The Court of Auditors report said investments in maintenance and security were indispensable for the long-term functioning of the institution, but that the Louvre had consistently prioritized visible and attractive projects instead. 4 suspects are in custody over the robbery on 19th of October, including 3 who are thought to have been members of a 4-man gang who used a stolen truck with an extendable ladder and a freight lift to reach the first-floor window of the museum's Apollo Gallery. 2 members of the gang smashed an unsecured window and 2 glass display cases before descending in the lift and fleeing on motorbikes driven by the other 2 in a brazen daylight heist that lasted less than 7 minutes from start to finish. They fled with 8 items, including an emerald and diamond necklace that Napoleon I gave to his second wife, Mary Louise, and a diadem set with 212 pearls and nearly 2,000 diamonds that once belonged to the wife of Napoleon III. None of the jewels have been recovered. The report, covering the museum's management between 2018 and 2024, concludes that decision-making had been, quote, at the expense of the maintenance and renovation of buildings and technical facilities, particularly those related to safety and security. It also highlights a persistent delay in the deployment of security equipment for the protection of the artworks, saying the Louvre, which has more than 8.7 million visitors last year, has not addressed this failing during the period under review. So I think they're gonna really ship up that security mechanism now, Alex, and they might include a number or 2, maybe Louvre exclamation point as their password.
Well, not now that you said it. Jesus Christ.
I'm sorry. I apologize.
Peter,
I apologize.
Come on.
I'm not thinking. This is my. You can blame the next heist on me, I guess.
Do they know whether the compromise of the system, well, the compromisability of their security system had anything to do with the heist itself, or is it sort of? It's
not my understanding that they've identified that the systems were used to be able to assist them, but like basically the whole thing is like, wow, we had virtually no security in the first place. Like anyone could have chosen to do this.
What? It's probably interesting to discuss why. Maybe most people don't understand what it means to have an old Windows operating system. And for all you could say it's tried and tested, right? It's not like the new stuff that could be broken. Surely they've nailed security for that one. The problem is that these are vast, and I mean vast code bases. They contain, a small civilization's worth of code. Right, it's not just the code that's written by Microsoft, but all the utilities they bring in and all the utilities that those guys bring in, and it's all exposed to the internet. Which, well, most of it is exposed to the internet, or if you get past enough layers, you get to other parts of the system. That what tends to happen, because these operating systems are deployed so widely, is that there is a market in exploits, as they're called, which is if you find that one of these well-distributed operating systems like Windows, some specific version have some specific odd behavior that it shouldn't have, even if it's not a full, send somebody a link and they're now infected or something. Any sort of, off-spec behavior can be banked, and then you can use people tend to use a bunch of them together to escalate their access, right? So the longer these things are out there, the more understanding and knowledge there is on, their security mechanisms and how to upgrade them, and how to bypass them. And you might say, well, why don't they fix them? And if you told that to Microsoft, they'll say, we did. We have several versions of this thing that we have released ever since. So, it's a bit of a chicken and egg problem, but unfortunately, the best you can do for security is to be not maybe at the cutting edge, but like close to it, which carries its own risks, of course. But for all intents and purposes, these old operating systems, especially ones that are out of their support window, are effectively abandoned to the gods of the internet. Like, there are probably now like well instrumented tools that your son, your 15-year-old son can download off of a well structured, beautiful website to go and like own all of the Windows 2000 machines in his network or something. Like, it's not.
Well, it's a little bit worse than what you're saying. It's not only the operating system itself, it's the applications that run on that are still there, because it's very possible that newer applications actually won't even install and run on the older ones, meaning that you are now using completely outdated and unsupported software on top of the operating system, which is out of support. So the landscape for vulnerabilities it continues to expand the longer that lasts, because smaller companies releasing software that you might be utilizing are no longer necessarily taking any care to patch vulnerabilities that might exist on that software.
Yeah. So basically, at that point, again, it takes minimal effort to completely compromise those systems, which is why if you give the slightest hoot about not being hacked, you don't do this. And I guess that's where it comes, the heist comes in, right? Because if they didn't care about having Windows 2000 deployed, they probably didn't care about having, I don't know, like well-functioning cameras, or addressing the latest, the techniques of the burglars, and sort of obfuscating or bypassing, say, physical security as well.
Yes, and to know how easy it could possibly be to possibly check for vulnerabilities on such a system, there is literally a distribution of Linux called Kali Linux that you can just download and run, and the minute you open it up, you have access to an infinite number of hacking tools just at your complete disposal, and certain tools themselves are able to have plugins that you can frequently update to be able to scan networks and detect these vulnerabilities. With you do need to have some knowledge of what you're doing, but you have to have less knowledge to exploit the systems than actually understanding the full exploit that you're doing. Meaning you don't necessarily have to understand the vulnerability in full. You just have to be able to know how to use the toolkits that are already preparing these exploits for you. It's kind of a wild universe. So the keeping things up to date when you have these precious heirlooms at the Louvre probably something that should be on a little higher on your priority list. Now, Alex, I don't know, did you consider this week to be a slow news week?
These museums, like, their value proposition is, right? The whole point that was being so Greece has a long running dispute with the British Museum about the marbles of the Parthenon, where anyway, it's a long story, but they have them and we don't. And their whole thing was like, well, you're not equipped to keep these, which is a bit of an irony. But if you can't secure what you've got, right? Like, these museums, both the Louvre and the British Museum, they just have a lot of things they've taken from other countries. So, it opens up a lot of questions as to, like, what even is your excuse here for holding these things?
Well, the entire series of Indiana Jones is just him going around and stealing things and from other places, stuff that doesn't belong to him that might be inside of a cave somewhere. So,
Yeah, Yeah, I mean, if I tell you the story of Lord Elgin, it was no Indiana Jones required. He just went to the Sultan of the Ottoman Empire that controlled Athens at the time. He got a piece of paper that says, "Yep, you can just go there and take stuff." And then they brought out the saws, like literally, they took saws to marble, and they packed into the crates as much as they could, which people argued a lot more than they were authorized to take. But who gives a shit? Once you're in the British Empire, what are they going to do? Come and take them back? And that's what that was all.
Well, it's always nice when things that have been stolen for a long time get to become the proper claim of the people who stole them over the years, as long as they were handed down stolen goods. Now, yes. I don't know, Alex, if you thought that this was a slow news week or not, but CNN definitely thinks that it's been a very important news week, as evidenced by some of the stories that they've pushed. CNN. Images of Trump appearing to close his eyes during Oval Office event spread across social media. Now, prepare yourself, Alex. The president closed his eyes.
No fucking, you've got to be kidding me, right? Are you kidding me?
Images of Donald Trump appearing to close his eyes at an Oval Office announcement this week rocketed around social media this weekend, with the president's opponents seizing on the footage to raise questions about Trump's on-the-job performance. Trump was participating in an announcement Thursday about cutting prices for popular weight loss drugs, speaking from behind the Resolute desk alongside other officials. At moments, Trump's eyes appeared closed, and at others, he seemed to struggle to keep them open. He rubbed his eyes at points. The images drew swift criticism from Trump's critics. The press office for California Governor Gavin Newsom, one of the president's top foils, posted images from the event and wrote, "Dozy Dawn is back." So just so in case you were worried that this was a slow news week, CNN is here to make sure that you are aware it's actually a fast-paced environment with a lot of controversy.
Besides Ben Shapiro, wow, that I did not know about this.
Yes. And in additional news, Alex, Pelosi's retirement announcement could open floodgates for a wave of new candidates from CNN. Former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's decision not to seek re-election next year could open the floodgates on the race to replace her. Pelosi, who has served in Congress since 1987, already had two primary challengers ahead of her Thursday announcement. Saikat Chakrabarti, a former chief of staff to U.S. Rep. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and Democratic California State Senator Scott Weiner. Chakrabarti launched his bid to unseat Pelosi earlier this year as part of the wave of younger Democratic challengers who argued the party needed candidates with new ideas to reshape it in the wake of the Republicans' 2024 electoral wins. Weiner, who has represented much of the city in the state Senate since 2016, previously said he wouldn't challenge the former House Speaker, but he argued that it was necessary to get in against Chakrabarti, a self-funder who made his millions in the tech industry. "I never wanted to run against Nancy Pelosi. I have enormous respect for her. I think she walks on water," Weiner said in an interview. "But there are limits to how long you can wait. At some point, you need to get into the race and start making the case to the voters." Other candidates are expected to announce their own bids. San Francisco Supervisor Connie Chan has been floated as a potential candidate, and former San Francisco Mayor London Breed told The Political Friday she was considering running. Already, the field of prospective and declared candidates has sparked discussions about what kind of leader the district should elect to represent a rare, solidly blue open seat. Pelosi won re-election to the San Francisco seat in 2024 with 81% of the vote. "We're really seeking authentic and courageous leadership for the working families across the country," said San Francisco deserves no less. Jane Kim, and California director for Working Families Party, told CNN, "It's a generational chance for a bold new voice in Congress for the city by the Bay, and we look forward to a robust endorsement process." So, as one headline said, the most successful investor in Congress is retiring. So...
I have some inside lore, if you like, about that situation.
Sure.
Not, mainline, but it's an interesting tangent. So Scott Weiner said that Pelosi walked on water, correct? She's amazing, right? Of course, and he would never dream of challenging her. So Scott Weiner was the I don't know how you call the person who's pushing a particular legislation, a sponsor. He was the lead sponsor of SB 1047, which was the that was going to get California to ban large language models that are trained with above a certain budget of compute. Just so people can contextualize this, basically all of the current batch of large language models have been trained with above that level of compute. And that law passed both the House and the Senate of California. So it was on Gavin Newsom's desk. I've said this story before, but not in this context. And the first news we had, I was quite involved in trying to stop that for, well, obvious reasons. But the first sign we had that things were looking up was when Pelosi said, this isn't the right law. Basically, we just have to, we can't do this. It's just way too far. And then Newsom vetoed it. And that's, between Pelosi and Newsom is why you have your latest GPTs, I think. Let's just say I have my doubts to what extent Scott Weiner is so enamored with Pelosi.
No, they're all very happy, including Ocasio-Cortez. She's been praising Miss Pelosi. Everyone is really enamored by her. She is a wonderful human being, and she loves ice cream. I don't know if you've ever seen the amount of ice cream that she stores in her freezer, but she has copious amounts of ice cream to let everybody know how much she loves it.
Was that a freshly stacked freezer for the purposes of photo shoots? Am I guessing?
Yeah, I mean, she has definitely taken the opportunity to take photos with the ice cream. I don't know if she loves it as much as Joe Biden does, but there's some competition for the ice cream love.
It brings them together. Common interests, yes, of course.
Now, Alex, I'm going to shift around a little bit of the order here because I like this flow better here. There have been several long-lasting meme formats that have floated around over the decades, things that are just perpetual. And one of them, for example, is that whenever someone famous dies, someone shows a screenshot of a tweet that says, "I have information that could lead to the arrest and imprisonment of Hillary Clinton." Right? You've seen that one before, correct? Alex, that perennial one.
You should give us the John McAfee retrospective. I haven't followed that one.
Well, that's an example one. That's just an example this week because there is a different one that we're going to be talking about. And one of those memes has actually a very high record of accuracy, self-fulfilling prophecy almost, which is the format: we got some previously futuristic thing before we got GTA 6. And that comes at the heels of the news story that GTA 6 is delayed again until November 2026. Now, this is going to be just a quick story because it's not that important in itself, but it does pose an important question given the predictability of the meme. We got some futuristic thing before GTA 6. Grand Theft Auto 6 has been delayed until November 19th, 2026. This news was announced today by Rockstar as part of Take-Two's second quarter earnings. In a release shared with IGN, Take-Two shared that the delay was giving the team some additional time to finish the game with the high level of polish players expect and deserve. Rockstar has our full support, of course, and we are confident they will deliver an unrivaled blockbuster entertainment experience. Grand Theft Auto 6 was originally announced for a fall of 2025 release, which CEO Strauss Zelnick said he felt confident in even amid speculation of a delay. The game was then delayed to May of 2026, with Rockstar citing a need for extra time to deliver at a level of quality you expect and deserve. In a conversation with Zelnick ahead of the announcement, IGN asked him of what he had changed in the year since he first said he had felt confident in the fall of 2025 date. Zelnick replied, It's all of 2025. We had more time to develop the title, and now we're getting closer to the release. We are grateful that it's still within the same fiscal year, and mostly we're grateful to Rockstar for constantly seeking perfection. It's not exactly a surprise that GTA 6 has been delayed again, given the studio's past record of delays, and while most fans are prepared to wait patiently for GTA 6 regardless of when it drops, some fans are taking the news a little bit hard. On a call with investors today, Zelnick also said players shouldn't expect any changes of the cadence of updates to GTA Online due to GTA 6's delay. We also spoke with him about how confident he is in the new release date. Just last week, Take-Two fired dozens of employees alleging gross misconduct and later leaking confidential information in a public forum. However, those employees claim they were instead fired for participating in online chats about organizing a union. The group and supporters protested in front of Rockstar North and Take-Two's UK offices today. Take-Two's reported net bookings of $1.96 billion in the best second quarter in the company history, thanks to the release of NBA 2K26, Mafia, The Old Country, and Borderlands 4. NBA 2K26 sold 5 million units since launch. GTA 5 continues to sell, having reached over 220 million units. If you're planning on revisiting GTA 5 while waiting on GTA 6, you've got plenty of guides for both beginner and seasoned players over on our Grand Theft Auto 5 wiki. Now, Alex, this raises two questions. Okay. First, will we get the singularity before we get GTA 6?
No.
No. Okay. No. And is that because then, the second question, that GTA 6 is actually the singularity and that's when we will get it?
Yes, it will be one of the signs of the apocalypse. GPT-8 will release the game as a distraction before it makes its final move.
Okay. Okay, because I was actually imagining that what they were doing was creating the singularity artificial world to plug us all into the Matrix, and that was what was taking so much time. Every single new AI advancement needed to be integrated into this Matrix that they were creating through GTA 6.
Will it look shockingly like GTA 6? Or
So I just wanted to poke a little fun at that before we move on to actual important news here.
Sorry, Gator, for us non-gamers,
yes.
What's the significance? Like, have they been announcing that? I remember, waiting for Duke Nukem 4, just to.
Well, Grand Theft Auto 5 was released September 17th, 2013. So, 12 years between video game releases for the hottest selling video game franchise of all time is quite a long time. I mean, I don't know how many projects you engage in where the timeline to delivery is 12 years.
Do you have any sense what took so long?
It's all been speculation and rumor, sort of, we're just trying to make it right. We're just trying to perfect it. We're just trying to get it right. And it's been delay after delay.
I do have some suggestions for a marketing campaign if they want to go that way.
Okay.
We waited for wokeness to go away. It's probably a good one to work with. This could not have been released under Kendi's rule or something.
That's very possible. I mean, that might work as a sort of selling point for the audiences that love to go hire prostitutes in a virtual game world and then murder them right after the act is done.
Yeah, I mean, you might see the problem. That's what I'm wondering if they were caught in a weird sort of Disney Star Wars situation where their best ideas were absolutely horrible, and then there was the next not best ones.
So. Now we're going to actually move on to some more important stories. Not that, the Louvre story isn't really important, but, that's just kind of silly and doesn't necessarily impact anything other than people who are really have strong feelings about those national jewels. This is Glenn Beck had John Solomon on. John Solomon is the CEO of the news outlet Just the News, which I have found over time to be a fairly reliable place to go. It doesn't tend to misreport. It doesn't tend to lead you astray. It doesn't even have a strong necessary opinion on the news. So I don't go there all the time, but every time I have gotten news from there, it seem to be fairly accurate. And John Solomon does seem to have his ducks in a row whenever he starts talking about a subject. So I'm going to play this because this is an update on the Comey situation, and we can revisit a little bit of stuff that we've talked about in the past to sort of bring context to things that he might be saying that are slightly without context.
John Solomon is with us. He is the CEO and editor-in-chief of Just the News. If you don't check that every day, you are really missing out on a great news site, justthenews.com. John, I have made a promise to my audience a long time ago. I do my best not to waste their time. And as I am looking through the things I want to talk to you about, I have to start with this question. Is any of this going to mean anything in the end? Or are we just spinning our wheels and wasting our time talking about how deep this scandal with James Comey is becoming?
And that is a great question, and I don't think history has answered it yet. It will really depend on the tenacity and the focus of the Justice Department, the prosecutors, and the jurors that are going to catch these cases, right? Are they willing to rise above politics and say, we don't want an FBI that goes after people based on their political color, not the quality of the evidence against them? And that is what began in 2015 on James Comey's watch, a different type of FBI that seemed to go after Donald Trump and his associates, regardless of evidence, and protect Democrats like Hillary Clinton and Hunter Biden, even though the evidence against them was pretty strong, as we ultimately found out from the IRS whistleblower. So we don't know yet. Listen, these are going to go to trial. If the judge lets them go to trial. The judge in the Comey case seems to be giving the prosecutors a hard time there already, but that's going to be litigated. It's probably going to go up to the appeals court and the Supreme Court. These are going to be long battles, but the question for everyone is the fight worth it? I think if you don't punish the people that created this mentality, you have destined America for a long time banana republic prosecution arc, and I think that's not what Americans want. They want to be able to say the FBI is above politics. It hasn't been in the last decade until maybe the last few months under Kash Patel.
Okay, so let's talk about what the new evidence is, the burn bags, the hidden rooms, and the evidence that now has been found that shows Comey looks like he was lying to Congress when he said, no, I didn't know anything about it. Yeah. So let's remind what the alleged lie is, what he's been accused of and indicted of lying. He told Congress in 2017 and then reaffirmed unequivocally in 2020 that he never asked any of his staff to anonymously leak or provide information to the news media. The government, Kash Patel, found significant documents that go to the contrary. Found these under John Durham, but they chose not to go after James Comey. So in the Bill Barr administration, they knew the same evidence and they didn't go after him. But what is the lie? He told Congress, I didn't. Two things. One, I never authorized anyone to leak to the media anonymously about the Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump cases. And two, I don't think I knew anything about a intelligence intercept that Hillary Clinton was setting up a fake Russian collusion hoax that we then ended up investigating. Well, what we now know first is that his own emails with his own top lieutenant, Daniel Richman, a former lawyer who he brought in as a special government employee of the FBI, so he's an FBI employee, show that James Comey told Richman, good job, and make them wiser, as he was briefing them on how he was anonymously trying to spin the New York Times and provide information to the New York Times about the Hillary Clinton case. So directly on point to the testimony he gave. I didn't authorize anyone to leak about Hillary Clinton. When their emails show his guy was leaking, and he was affirming it and say, go ahead, and even encouraging him to make that reporter wiser. In other words, give them more information anonymously. So that's the first lie. The second lie, right?
And by the way, a grand jury bought that evidence and said, we believe you lied. Now there's a second piece to it. And that is what we call the Clinton plan intelligence. Was Comey, as John Brennan claimed and as other evidence showed, did Comey know, did he pay attention, did he have some awareness that as his FBI was starting to investigate the Russia collusion ruse, the hoax, that Hillary Clinton had been intercepted, or her people had been intercepted, showing that she approved the plan to create this hoax. He said, doesn't ring true to me. I don't think I knew about it. Well, in a locker, in a burn bag, they found some handwritten notes of James Comey that appeared to include the briefing from John Brennan, where he clearly knew that Hillary Clinton had been intercepted, approving, or her team had been intercepted, saying she approved this plan to hang a fake Russian shingle on Donald Trump's campaign house. Now, those are handwritten notes, his notes.
Yeah, that is in his handwriting that he clearly understood. And so now you've got him on two really significant lies that show that this whole thing they were in collusion with one another, and all of this was bogus, and they knew it from the beginning.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And that's why, when you look at this, and then let's take the third back of this, those notes were never produced in earlier subpoenas to Congress or other investigations. They were found in a room where it appears, according to the government, there was an effort to get rid of or hide this evidence. So it had been hidden from prior subpoenas, according to the government, according to Lindsay Halligan's prosecutors. And then two, it looked like they were in burn bags and almost burned, meaning they would never be there. Now, some other people said, there's electronic records of it. It turns out, according to the government, there was no electronic record of the notes, meaning if they had been burned or destroyed or hidden, we would never have had them. Now, why would James Comey want to lie about this? Because as we see in these same emails, it appears he had a motive. His motive, as he wrote his colleague, is, I fully expect to be working for President-elect Hillary Clinton. She's talking this way before the election in 2016. He thought Hillary was going to be his boss. And as he wrote Dan Richmond, he said, I think Hillary Clinton will be, quote unquote, pleased by the way I handled her email case. In other words, he deep-sixed it in July. He reopened it and cleared her a second time. And when the smoke cleared, Hillary would like him and keep him on as FBI director. That is the insinuation of those notes. So if he was in bed with
I want to give the exact I want to give the exact phrase he wrote. A President-elect Clinton will be very grateful.
Yeah, grateful. I'm sorry. You're right. You're right. It's very grateful. So he expected that to be the outcome. If that's his mindset in the fall of 2016, and he opens up an investigation on Hillary Clinton, what we now know to be a ruse, bad evidence, an agency had to lie to the FISA court to get the FISA warrants. If his motive was that, or his thinking was that, he probably is not going to want to admit that I was warned that maybe this was all a joke before I allowed this investigation to go forward, before I affixed my name to a FISA warrant that the courts have now said was misleading, false, and violated the law. So that is the context in which the prosecutors are going to try to bring this case. Now, it's going to be in Northern Virginia, where there are a lot of federal workers and a lot of anti-Trump sentiment. Can they get a conviction? We don't know. But is it worth trying to do it? Most people I talk to say yes, because the alternative is you have, by inaction, sanctioned it, which is what Bill Barr and John Durham did by not bringing this prosecution in 2020.
Yep. All right, can I switch topics? There's something that came out today. James Comey's daughter and the Epstein case. Apparently, James Comey's daughter sent a message to Epstein that if you don't even have to prove it, but if you can show us anything that ties Donald Trump to this, it's going to go a lot easier for you. Can you give me this story?
Yeah, I've seen it. I've not been able to corroborate that. So I'm always in this world of media today. I try to be super careful because it's hard to know if things are true or true to dig in.
All right, Alex, any thoughts first before I go and give a little bit of background on what we've talked about previously and some background to sort of connect the dots to what John Solomon just said?
I mean, it's wild. It's absolutely insane. And the fact that Comey's daughter, that little bit they threw in at the end, basically, I mean, everybody was like, oh my God, Comey's daughter, it was. What do you mean? I mean, that she's not allowed to become a prosecutor? Is she not allowed to work in New York? Like, what's she going to do? Like, just like not take the case? Like, but here you are. Yeah, no, it's wild. The other thing is that, you always wonder with corrupt regimes when their inability to attract competent people gets to them, before they get to their enemies. And this burn bag situation appears to be a good example of, like, can you imagine the face palming that would have gone on when they heard that those notes had not been burned?
Evidence to destroy. Very important.
Yeah.
So,
to commit.
In the past, Alex, I want to remind our listeners that we did a long discussion about Comey's time in the first Trump administration, both slightly preceding, during the election, and his few months as as the FBI director under Trump. And I've posted a link to a excerpt from that episode, which I have titled specifically James Comey, Professional Son of a Bitch, which is a long story about that time where he was leaking to the media and coordinating his leaks with, at the time that we were discussing it, I was focused on Benjamin Wittes, because you had at the time just recently discovered this Benjamin Wittes character who I was giving you some additional background context on. He was among the people that Comey was using to coordinate narrative control with the media while he was working as FBI director. And John Solomon spoke of this other individual who was actually a special employee of the FBI, sort of a consultant outside who had special clearance and access at the time. And a couple weeks ago, Alex, I played a clip of Benjamin Wittes sort of bragging that he was used to this capacity, that he was helping Comey coordinate the narrative control in the media during the first Trump administration, actually boasting of this role that he played, and mentioned this other individual, saying, but I don't think he was working for the FBI at the time. And of course, now we're hearing that he was actually working for the FBI during the Clinton activity and was part of narrative control as Comey was using him, which was one of the questions that Comey was asked. Now, there's an additional thing that we didn't go into too much because at the time that it came out, there wasn't a lot of information. It was more of just sort of like a sensationalistic sort of statement. But the burn bag situation, the first I am aware that it became something to discuss, this information was public in any way whatsoever, was when Kash Patel went on Joe Rogan some number of months ago. Now, I don't have the clip right now with me of the Joe Rogan situation, but I do have a more recent clip from September 17th where Kash Patel was being asked about this burn bag in Congress.
Gentleman from Texas is recognized.
Thank you. Director, earlier this year, the committee learned of new documents tied to the Crossfire Hurricane investigation and the Russia collusion hoax against President Trump. Your efforts in declassifying key documents tied to this investigation allowed the committee to acquire thousands of pages that it did not have previously. Did any of your predecessors make any effort to declassify these documents?
Not to the extent we have.
Did any of your predecessors share or leak any details that were classified at the time?
There are ongoing leak investigations across the board at the Bureau related to this.
I believe one of those is Mr. Comey, and I thank you for continuing that investigation. Among the declassified documents are the Durham Report Annex, the Crossfire Binder, and the Nellie Orr Criminal Referral. Could you summarize for those watching what we know about the Russia collusion hoax so far?
Well, sir, I think the record will speak that the Russia collusion matter was perpetrated by a political party to go overseas and obtain information from a foreign intelligence asset, only to have that information, which was demonstrably false, turned over to the FBI, who walked into a federal FISA secret court and asked for a secret surveillance court order and lied to the federal court, and we know that because someone was convicted of it, and only to surveil the political opponent. So that is a massive scandal. We helped expose it. And in terms of the pages of productions, I provided 1,400 pages of production related to Crossfire Hurricane, and my predecessors have provided 0.
I appreciate that, and I appreciate your courage and commitment to declassifying these important documents for our review, and hope that you'll continue with this commitment. Can we expect to see more declassification efforts regarding the Crossfire Hurricane and Russia collusion hoax?
Yes.
Thank you. I yield the remaining balance of my time to Chairman Jordan.
I thank the gentleman for yielding. And Director, that's when it all started, right? The whole Russia, that's when it all began. And then it was Mueller, then it was impeachment, then it was Jack Smith and Fonnie Willis and Alvin Bragg and you name it. But it all started then. And that's why I think the gentleman from Texas wants to make sure we get all the information there. And I want to go back to when it was changed. We talked about this earlier. I just want to read to you what the CIA officer said to the House
Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence. Quote, Brennan refused to remove the dossier, and when confronted with the dossier's main flaws, he responded, yes, but doesn't it ring true? So that's what he initially said. And then when he was talking to this committee, he said the CIA was very much opposed to having any reference or inclusion of the Steele dossier in the intelligence community assessment. So on one hand, you got a witness who was there who said he refused to remove it even though he knew it was garbage. And then he's on the other hand telling the committee, no, we didn't want anything to do with it. It shouldn't have been a part of the intelligence community assessment, which we know it was. You know it was. You found that. Those are two entirely different stories. I think Mr. Brennan has some explaining to do, frankly, what happened there. And I think you said earlier that this whole thing, and I think you said to Mr. Gooden, this whole thing is being looked at as part of this grand conspiracy to undermine the president, whether it's Comey, Brennan, Clapper, former head of the Intelligence Committee, now senator from, whoever it is, that's all being looked at. Is that accurate?
Yes, sir.
Well, we appreciate that. And part of what's also being looked at, and I think the gentleman from Wisconsin brought this up earlier, what is a burn bag for, by the way?
Generally speaking, the intelligence community obviously utilizes and possesses classified documents, but drafts of those classified documents and even ultimate finished products of those classified documents have to be recorded and or discarded. And if they are discarded, the only way we do that, the hard copies, is we literally put them in burn bags that are identified specifically for that purpose. And there is a very exact courier system in which those burn bags are obtained and the material inside is destroyed.
So it's to get rid of the material, right?
Yes, sir.
And it looks like the annex that Mr. Durham in his investigation had was put into a burn bag by your predecessor, I assume, to be destroyed. Is that accurate?
Without getting into the stylization of the evidence, anything that's put in a burn bag is for purposes of destruction.
Do you find that interesting that the Durham annex was placed in a burn bag, that you would discover that when you took over as the head of the FBI?
We found a lot of information in a lot of burn bags.
So for a little bit of additional context to chain these things together, this situation with Brennan was something that actually did come out during the original Durham report in a sort of minor degree. So Catherine Herridge, who used to work for CBS before she was let go and then went on an independent streak, she has been sort of on top of this from the beginning, and I was following her reporting and following this story basically since 2020. And I've attached the link to this one tweet that she has, which I'll read now, which is the Durham report. DNI Ratcliffe declassifies 2016 notes from former CIA Director Brennan, heavily redacted to protect sources and methods for intel, alleging proposed plan, quote, approved by Hillary Rodham Clinton to vilify Donald Trump by stirring up scandal, claiming interference by Russian security services. And she attaches links to the redacted documents where Brennan is putting these notes. And this ties back to Comey's testimony in the following way, which is what they supposedly found in these burn bags, which is Comey was part of the conversation in the Oval Office with the president and Joe Biden and things like that as Brennan was discussing this matter. So hypothetically, as I do understand the full story, Hillary was working on this somewhat independently. The Russian intelligence supposedly got word that she was on this sort of smear campaign. We got wind of the Russians' intelligence and started discussing it and confirming that Hillary was doing this. And then not necessarily in collusion with Hillary, but sort of as a parallel task, they decided that they were going to help her run with that narrative in whatever way they could. So they would attempt to say things where they could talk out of both sides of their mouths by allowing stories to circulate. But then whenever the details would start to crumble because there wasn't enough support, they'd pretend that they would never actually believed it that much and that nobody ever really said it. So they were going to support the smear campaign sort of on the sly. And that's when Comey started to behave extremely shady, which I do outline in the podcast, which is how he was leaking to the media to sort of help this narrative and purposely gaunt the special counsel of Mueller on Trump over this Russia thing, despite never writing a single thing about Russia other than the alleged existence of a P tape, which I go into in that in that story. So, Alex, any any additional clarifying thoughts on the matter, or thoughts overall?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. No. I mean, it's. I don't know. I don't have anything particularly specific to say, other than that it just continues to stun me how, what they did, and I mean what the conventional meaning of, sort of conventional word description of what they did is. I mean, I believe treason technically requires doing it in favor of an enemy nation, yeah. Right? But whatever the part of it is that does not, that requires a domestic enemy. I mean, that's
some analog of betraying your country, right? Like,
yeah. It's like, I mean, it's Spectre. If you were to, whatever the James Bond sort of villains were doing in favor of Spectre, is that like not treason because Spectre is not a country? I don't know. Anyway, yeah, it's. I mean, it's the other crazy part, honestly, after what we've been through with COVID and whatnot, is that we might actually get somebody to get punished for this. This is wild. I'd given up.
So the risk that you run, everyone, I believe, remembers the Russia collusion hysteria in the media, and the probably have seen the montages where the media was repeating phrases like the walls are closing in, the walls are closing in. And if you followed that narrative with any real discernment, you would see that the straws they were grabbing at were changing all the time. There wasn't necessarily a strong, coherent thing. And the thing that separates that sort of hysteria from what I believe I understand about the reverse situation, which would be the actual conspiracy that I believe would have existed to create a fictitious conspiracy where Donald Trump and Putin had colluded to subvert the United States election and make him president. This has just several details which I've followed, which seemed extremely important, that have now sort of coalesced into what we are now witnessing. Meaning my confidence, I could, like, all of it could be a lie. I don't have access to the main source materials. And hypothetically speaking, fictitious items could have been placed, and details like Catherine Herridge's report on what was in the Durham report and this partially declassified document from Brennan, all of that could be imaginary as well and just there to weaponize. But these details were so minute and so few people were following them at the time that they were coming out, and now they're coalescing into this broader story. That is how I'm attempting to make sure that I'm not following a hallucination, that I thought these were important details at the time. All of the details I thought were important at the time that nobody else was really hammering about suddenly are coalescing into one of the most important things in the story. And so that's kind of the way that I'm trying to make sure that I'm not being manipulated, or at least it's a very subtle and subtle manipulation if it is, and that I'm being given a complete mirage. Alex, I don't know what you do to try to do your best to prevent.
Look, Gator, I often say this, it's like, it's not that we're never going to fall for any kind of psyop, but when you sort of see one coming at you, you often think, is this really the best you have? Is like entire state budgets, and like you come up with that, So if it's something that, somebody put in, a lot of thought, and they found the minimum amount of manipulation that is required, to pass off a false story, which touches on multiple true details and whatever. Okay, fine. They earned it.
Yeah, I guess. Very, very good subtle psyop. You win. You tricked me. If that's yeah.
It's above the. It might not be true, but it's above the the psyop level we're used to. Maybe we need a new classification for that. It's like, it's like better than the usual psyop or true.
I do honestly, not just to be self-serving, but I do believe if you go back and listen, if you haven't, or it was a long time, you just vaguely recall that we did that. I do recommend, I've linked to it here, that you go back and listen to the, what I've now titled in our podcast history, James Comey, Professional Son of a Bitch, to sort of get a bootstrap on what happened during those times, particularly with James Comey, because I do believe I paint an accurate and complete enough picture of what happened during the Russian collusion phase, which gives you enough background to start to get a hold on what the current things are about, because it's a very, very intense and thick story that I do hope actually has some sane resolution in some way, because it made the country go insane for 3 years. That was a 3-year narrative arc of Trump being this Manchurian candidate with who had colluded with one of our current major world adversaries in order to assume control of the White House. Like, it was bizarre if you just go backwards and think about it, like that. The fact that was a chapter in the United States history is insane. But Alex, if you want to continue thoughts on that, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I mean, speaking of little details, your description of Comey as a professional something or other reminded me of that little story with him discovering, or what was it? His wife discovering on the beach, or his wife?
8647.
Yeah, that's right. And you thought, or one would think when you see that, it's like, wow, man, how desperate are you? This isn't even, it's never going to work. Like, what are you even doing here? But you know what? If he had a sense, and perhaps from people who still talk to him from the inside of what was going on, was being discovered, you can't paint a picture where he was like, look, my only chance is somebody gets rid of him. So how can I send the message? You know what I mean? I don't know. That's the only thought that comes to mind about, that can explain that in relation to this.
Well, I had said mentioned my concern about, of course, being misled and following false narratives. And I am strongly confident in my understanding of the scenario to the degree where I don't believe that I'm, falling for some mirage. But the details, like we found all this information in sort of a locked hidden room in a burn bag, is the type of detail where it's like, wow, that really sounds too serendipitous to be true. I hope that is actually true. And that, that's not just something I'm buying because it fits the story that I already thought I understood, But again, the details that I've been following are so specific and so understated across time that the fact that I thought they were important at the time and it largely was not talked about, and they're like these little details that I knew that weren't necessarily hyped on, I think it gives me a little bit more confidence that I'm following the right set of details. And if they did invent a burn bag, okay, but if no one actually claims that it's imaginary, I mean, that would be part of the defenses, I guess. If Comey, if that information from this burn bag is used in Comey's trial, one of the defenses would have to be, if it was fake, hey, that's fake, right? None of that was real. And then the government would have to try to certify authenticity, which I imagine they would have some means of trying, convincing the rest of us that there was an authentic find, right? That the chain of handoffs. Give me the phrase. I'm missing the phrase right now. Chain of custody is fully accounted for, so that it's not a situation that would be revealed as being planted evidence later. So.
Yeah, no. So I have a rule of epistemics that is probably contentious. I don't think that everybody would accept it, but I generally think that the side that is kind of down in the power dynamic tends to be more truthful. Not because they're good people necessarily, but because they know that they can't get away with blatant lies.
They don't have as much the narrative control, is what you're saying.
Right. So I wouldn't expect the Kash Patels of the world in this particular situation. And I understand that somebody might say, how do you say they're down since they're in government and second time and whatever. I get it, but this is in my framework. They're still not fully in control of the state and of the media bandwidth, though that is changing. They're definitely doing a lot better now than they were in 2016. Still, I would expect them not to do something that it can be, that is so blatant that they can be called out on, because they will.
I have not heard or read any accusations that the burn bag is fake, which you would expect.
That's interesting, right? Because, it is the default thing you'd say. It's like, a burn bag, yeah, sure, whatever, right?
Yeah.
So the fact that we haven't heard it is a dog that didn't bark in a way.
Yes. Now, Alex, I'm going to open up to any comments. If you want to request to speak, go ahead and do it while I ask Alex if he wants to have a fun little journey down leftist conspiracy theory TikTok.
Let's do it. Can we inaugurate the meme that, how they say the left can't meme? Okay. They also can't conspiracy theory?
Well,
I guess let's see.
Well, Elon is directly involved in this conspiracy, so I think that you will enjoy this quite heavily. Okay? This involves Elon Musk and Neuralink.
So I came across some jarring information tonight, and I have to tell someone about it. So I've been keeping tabs on Neuralink a lot lately, Elon Musk's brain chip company, because with all of the 1930s style propaganda coming from the White House as of late, I just have this really bad feeling that Elon Musk might be our Dr. Joseph Mengele. And here's why. First of all, if you haven't already, please go follow me over on Substack, The Dre Dossier. It's free. The link is in my bio. This full video is going to be posted there along with a deeper dive and with all of my sources cited, so please go subscribe. So in July of 2025, this year, Elon Musk announced that Neuralink needs to go from 7 brain implants to about 1,000 implants by the end of 2026. Now, that's about 993 people over the course of, 15 months now, who would be willing to get an experimental brain surgery. That's like 60 some odd patients a month. And at the rate in which it took him to get 7 done, feels nearly impossible, if you ask me. Now, there are a couple things that have been bothering me, especially about these Neuralink sites, because they have approved through the FDA 2 sites in the United States. One, which is in Phoenix, Arizona at the Barrow Neurological Institute, and the other, which is in Miami, Florida, which is at the University of Miami, which has a big neurological brain study program. Both of those cities also have really, really large ICE detention centers very close by. Now, yes, in Miami, they have Alligator Alcatraz, but they also have Chrome Detention Facility, which is like their super large one where a lot of the intake usually goes through. From December of 2024 to February of 2025, there have been 3 deaths once a month at Chrome Detention Facility, and all of them had to do with neurological symptoms like brain hemorrhages and seizures and vomiting and the like. Not unlike what a lot of the outcomes of the monkeys that Elon Musk used to operate on looked like. Just for the record. Now, there's a different kind of pattern that's equally concerning in Phoenix, Arizona. So Neuralink operates, like I said, at the Barrow Neurological Institute, and then right nearby there are major ICE detention facilities, Eloy and Florence. Now, the amount of time spent in solitary confinement at these Arizona facilities went from 14 days in 2024, which had been a pattern since like 2021, to 38 days in 2025 as the average. Like, that's a 271% increase. 38 days is more than a month with no witnesses, no oversight, no documentation of what's happening. And all of this just so happens to be going on and increasing right when Neuralink is also trying to desperately scale up their operations so they can stay competitive with other countries. So those patterns have been bothering me for quite some time now, right? Especially with the Alligator Alcatraz now like missing hundreds of detainees that have no record and like all of it. So I decided to dig a little deeper tonight, and I went to usaspending.gov, which is this website where you can search for all of the federal contracts that are made public. So you can search for anything related to, I don't know, the Department of Defense and neurosurgery, for instance. And that's when I noticed something kind of weird happening, because Honolulu kept coming up a lot with DoD contracts and neurological surgery, like over and over and over again. And I I'm thinking to myself, why Honolulu? Like, what's going on in Honolulu? I mean, all of them were from the Department of Defense, and they were all for these different neurological services, neurological procedures, neurological surgery practices, and they were all ramping up starting in 2025. And the company that was getting all of these contracts was called NIR LLC, and the work was being performed out of Triple Army Medical Center, which is this really big military hospital in Honolulu. I'm thinking to myself, okay, well, maybe this is just normal medical family military care. But when I went to look up NIR LLC to see if I could learn more about them, there was nothing about them online. There's no company website, there's no physician names, nothing on them. I mean, for a medical contractor who's doing so many neurological surgery procedures with federal money, not having so much as a website feels odd. But then, at the very bottom of the Google search, I saw a link to a MapQuest that said NIR, and it had a little point of where it was. So I clicked the link, and it showed NIR LLC at the location of 888 South King Street in Honolulu. Now, if you were to look up NIR LLC on any other map, nothing comes up. But when you type in 888 South King Street, Honolulu, something does come up, and that something is Straub Medical Center, which is one of Hawaii's largest civilian hospitals that has a major neurology and neurosurgery department. So now I'm really confused, right? Because why is their billing address a commercial office building, but then they're actually operating out of a civilian hospital with a huge neurosurgery center, but then the Department of Defense is paying them for services at a military hospital all on the same island? This feels like a paper trail that's being obfuscated on purpose a little bit. I'm thinking, well, maybe does Neuralink operate out of Honolulu, Hawaii? And I just didn't know about it. And I look it up, and no, Hawaii isn't listed on the official trial site. It's just Miami, Florida, and Phoenix, Arizona, and then Toronto, Canada. I'm thinking to myself, well, just because the FDA doesn't know about it doesn't mean that it's not necessarily happening. So I decided to go on LinkedIn to see if I can find anybody who has Neuralink listed as their current employer and also lives in Honolulu, Hawaii. And that's when I find two people. First one is a clinical project manager who works at Neuralink and lives in Honolulu, Hawaii. And it looks like she's been with Neuralink for a few years now. And I looked at her job responsibilities, and it said trial site management, implementation of clinical trials, management and oversight of external vendors, negotiating and building relationships with organizations. She manages trial sites and external vendors, but Hawaii isn't an official Neuralink trial site. So what you doing, sis? The other person I found was this guy who runs something called Hang Ten Capital, and he lives in Honolulu, Hawaii. And it's a private equity firm that also runs out of Honolulu, Hawaii. And they invest in things like fintech and food startups, but I looked at their portfolio and saw Neuralink listed. All right, so we have some smoking guns in Honolulu. But I'm thinking to myself, okay, so if the thesis here is that something sus is going on with Neuralink and the operation facilities being close to ICE detention centers, does this fit that thesis? Is there an ICE detention facility near these, medical facilities in Honolulu? And oh boy, did I regret asking that question. Apparently, in February of 2025, ICE had signed an agreement to start housing detainees at FDC Honolulu. That's a 992-bed detention center facility. I didn't know about. Did anybody else know about this? And then I found an article from July 2025 that was talking about this and was saying that detainees were being transferred to Hawaii from Florida and Arizona detention facilities, the exact two states where Neuralink trials had started. And so I looked at the distance between FDC Honolulu and Straub Medical Center, where NIR LLC actually operates from, apparently, and it's 8 miles, a quick 15-minute drive. And to make things worse, the same time in February of 2025, when that agreement was being signed between ICE and Honolulu, Elon Musk's Doge was still in the White House. You remember that? And they had apparently, while they were there, had fired 20 FDA employees that month in February. And so I looked up which department they were from, and they were from none other than the Office of Neurological and Physical Medicine Devices. Yeah, the exact office that oversees Neuralink's clinical trials. Anyone else feeling a little bit queasy, or is that just me? And so I'm looking into this further, and I found that when detainees are transferred to Hawaii, they're apparently often going through 5 to 7 different facilities first. One detainee was arrested in Florida in May and then went through 2 other facilities, then to Louisiana, then Arizona, and then some California facilities, and then landed in Hawaii. He wasn't even served with a charging document until June. That's a month of completely unaccounted time. And just think about it. Not only is there minimal oversight during that month, but then by the time that they get to Hawaii, they're 4,500 miles away from anyone. That's complete isolation. detention, and then if they complain after a procedure is over, they can just be deported and nobody would even know about it. That's exactly what happened at Irwin County Detention Center in Georgia, where women were reported as having unauthorized gynecological procedures and then were deported within days if they complained. Oh, and I forgot to mention that in April of 2025, acting ICE Director Todd Lyons had given a presentation at the Border Security Expo in Phoenix, and he had specifically stated that they had been working with Elon Musk's Doge frequently. That just doesn't make me feel any better either. So look, either I'm seeing patterns that just aren't there, or we're watching something horrifying happen in real time. I mean, these are...
Alex, your thoughts? I
don't want to be speaking without evidence, so I'm just opening up the map of Honolulu.
Okay.
I'm on
right.
Google Earth, and I'm counting a distance of what seems the one end of the city to the other, and that's about 10 miles.
Okay.
So she said that two things in Honolulu are 8 miles apart, a quick 15-minute drive. And it's like, yeah, I mean, you know.
So you're skeptical that
how big? I mean, I of course I am skeptical. Yes, that is normal. I'm just sort of, you know, the one of the more interesting one was that these two things are 8 miles apart. All right, Eminem. Yeah. Well, I mean, the have you seen any videos of the people who have had the Neuralinks installed?
I've seen a couple of people, the quadriplegic kind of people, like two different people. I recall seeing specifically who were using it to control a mouse or try to speak because they actually couldn't use their mouth or anymore or anything like that.
Yeah. So the just to sort of take this as seriously as possible, her take is that a treatment that can take a person who previously couldn't speak or control a computer or a phone or basically interact with the modern world without an assistant, and giving them that power back, that is so such a dearth in patients who might want to give it a shot that of course they're going to go for illegal immigrants, because you got to understand, like what Neuralink wants to do is get FDA approval ultimately, right? So you're not going to get FDA approval by presenting them with a study that you've done on people who haven't consented. Okay, it's just not how it works at all. Yet. Yeah. Anyway,
well,
so
she did mention several women who had unauthorized gynecological exams, supposedly. So if those women also happen to think with their pussy,
well, I mean, you know what they say about some men who think with their other members.
Exactly.
I mean, exactly. I don't know. Here we're getting into that. That might explain some of Elon's tweeting. Honestly, maybe he put a Neuralink down there. I don't know.
Right.
It's all coming together. I take back what I said about the left memeing. I'm totally sold on this one.
I mean, it's a bold hypothesis that the ICE project is supplying Elon Musk with a supply of people to operate on and put his Neuralink technology into. The part where I start to lose the train, is they're doing the surgery and then letting the people, like deporting them where they're not accounted for anymore. So how do you do a follow-up study? I could possibly understand the hypothesis if it was, we need to make sure that we can do more invasive type surgeries where the patient survives, and therefore we're doing these surgeries without actually trying to test the equipment necessarily. We're just trying to have a successful implantation or something like that. That would be the only sort of way that I can kind of make this hypothesis be coherent. I don't know if you have any other way of making it coherent than I do, but
I will say, as a advice from one conspiracy theory to another to that lady, if you are gonna try to make up I've loosely titled her take the pineapple Alcatraz. Okay, just because of the
all right
Hawaii and alligator Alcatraz constant mentions. So let's call this a pineapple Alcatraz. If you want to, sort of have people at least not immediately discredit you, try not to say things like, I had this conclusion, and then I started looking around for things that might confirm it. And look at these things that don't make any sense nor do confirm anything. But if you squint, maybe.
I see. So you're saying she was operating with a little bit of motivated reasoning. I don't know. I have more respect for her than you do. I don't know.
So her total evidence linking Neuralink in Hawaii was 2 people in LinkedIn. And boy, did she regret asking that question, because that totally seems completely horrified. And the 2 people is some person who worked at some venture capital that somehow had invested in Neuralink. Okay. Do you know how many people that is? And yes, they like to live in expensive places. If you're going to do that, by the way, here's a freebie for you. Larry fucking Ellison owns an island, all right, in Hawaii. You don't need to go very far. He's invested in most things Elon has done. It's a very, it's a pretty sure take that has got a slice in it. Anyway, okay, so some person who's linked to some fund has got some small slice of Neuralink is based out of there. Fine. And the other one was some person who organizes trial sites. Now, you know how LinkedIn pages are, right? And so there's totally a chance that, she might have moved and not updated her location, or moved on from Neuralink and not updated her employment. Or, there's the occasional Elon Musk company employee that gets granted the privilege of working remotely, which is reserved for a very small amount of people, actually. So that's what she's got in an entire State of the Union. There's 2 people. I don't know. It's kind of wild, man.
I hope you have appreciated me bringing this theory to your attention.
Do. But at least, I hope she ends by saying, and this is how Elon cares about immigrants, because he's turning them into Supermen or something. But no.
He's giving them the power to think with their vagina, sir. I mean, that's additional cognitive power that you never knew you could even do. So
I don't want to sort of. I feel like since we're going into Neuralink, I have to sort of clarify. I understand the concerns about Neuralink. Okay, I feel like I can defend its development. Due to the alternatives, what they are, and how a lot of things come together in the near future timeline.
Which concerns are you referring to when you say the concerns?
Well, the obvious one is, right, like if a bunch of people start getting plugged in, then you have, how they say, well, the feds can sort of stop your car remotely.
Yeah.
Because it's now plugged into the internet. Well, like that, but your brain. So
yeah.
Right. You can. It's not hard to figure out the problems with. It would
be very advantageous to turn on the bad idea components in your competition's brain.
And I will say, I sure hope it still works when Amazon is down. Just to connect this with last week.
Yes. Please don't use AWS as your sole means of communication.
No. And even if you do, you just make sure it works.
Honey, what's wrong? You're just staring into space. AWS is down.
I'm looking for my SpaceX satellite. Yes. So anyway, there's that, right? And in general, like all sorts of dystopian scenarios, right? I get that. I fully do. And I'm not here to defend that, but if you're gonna come after that, there are very reasonable arguments to make against it than whatever this was. And I will say, even to people who are critical of Neuralink, like if this is your way to go after it, the only effect it has is to make people immediately dismissive of whatever your take is, because if the obvious inference is that this is the best you have, and I can tell you, like, this is not the best I have.
Well, I would say this, so while I'm not giving credence to the idea that this is reality, that but for the sake of conversation, if it really was some evil sort of idea where we were providing people to experiment on the surgery with, not necessarily the actual implants themselves, but the procedures that would put in an implant through a more invasive process, and trying to make sure that we had the surgery down to a higher survivability rate by using what would be grossly considered discardable people and test subjects, right? Because the idea, of course, is that nobody cares about these people and we can just make them disappear, so there's no one to complain and things like that. That at least sort of fits the worldview that a lot of people live in, which is, Elon Musk is a literal Nazi. He did the Nazi salute, that this is a literal sort of Nazi government, and that everything is coming from a Nazi sort of location, and we know what the Nazis did, right? Like, we know that Nazis conducted experiments on human beings to supposedly learn things about human anatomy and what you could do. Like, that's
right.
At least fits that paradigm in their world to be a plausible concern. Outside of that,
and thank you for reminding me of that portion of her take in the beginning, because she totally mangled her Dr. Mangle's name, which is Dr. Mengele. Fucking moron. I don't know if you heard it. She was
Mangeli.
like, I think he's Dr. Mangle. It's like,
listen, sir,
maybe you, not him.
You made me far too self-conscious about my ability to pronunciate things over time. So
I don't think you Dr. Mangle it that badly, Gator.
Louvre.
Okay.
At least you take feedback,
Yes. All right. Well, I think we can move on here now. We have a lot of things in the Trump world to go over. We may want to skip some of it, though. Let's jump right here to the tariff situation, because there's a lot going on in that world. First, we're going to go to what Trump had done in an interview on 60 Minutes discussing the tariff. Actually, no. Finally got Donald J. Trump up here. We'll let him go and comment first, discuss, because he was maybe having some technical difficulties getting on up. Donald J. Trump, PhD, thank you for joining. What's up, sir?
Oh, just on the Hawaii thing, that was hilarious. So I lived down the street from Straub and Queens Medical Center on South King Street for about 10 years. And I've had I had some reconstructive surgery in Tripler. It's Tripler Army base, not triple. So, Alex is right. That island's small. I lived about 2.6 miles from that medical center, and that still took about 20 minutes to get there. So, but number two, I know a lot of people in that medical center too, like on the insurance side, on every side, and no one's mentioned horrible experiments to me. But number two, like, the big thing is Tripler is what's considered a major kind of hospital, wartime hospital for, so it's made to take massive casualties if we get in a real war. So Bethesda, Bragg, and Balboa in San Diego, they're made to take the bulk of the casualties that are coming through and getting shipped back stateside. So they maintain specialist contracts because the military doesn't have a lot of neurosurgeons on staff. So these are like standby contracts. So they can plus up if they need to during wartime. A lot of them.
We should hook them up with Sam Harris.
The what?
Nothing.
So yeah, I mean, I guess they're plussing up for the immigrants. I mean, that makes sense, I guess.
Well, you said you haven't heard anybody complain, but let me ask you this. Have you observed a statistically significant amount of affinity towards Tesla products?
I don't know. I'll ask my insurance friend out there and see what the insurance rates are going up for Tesla or not.
Because if they are conducting these secret experiments, maybe perhaps the neural links are really just there to advertise subliminally to the people to buy more Tesla products or something along those lines. Maybe you're not going to observe it in complaints about the surgery.
That's right. They might be. If you take a brain chip implant and then they ask you how you feel about it, I mean, there's an obvious conflict. I love it. This is the best thing ever. I'm contractually obliged to say that, by the way.
I see. Okay. Well, you can stick around, Donald J. Trump, if you'd like to. Hopefully we can get your input on some things as we go forward. Always enjoy having you up here. I'm going to play Donald Trump from 60 Minutes, where he discusses the tariff situation.
60 Minutes overtime. What did you get out of this deal that you wanted?
Well, I got sort of everything that we wanted. We got no rare earth threat. That's gone, completely gone. We have tremendous amounts of dollars pouring in because we have very big tariffs, almost 50%. We never had anything in terms of tariffs, although I put tariffs on China, but Biden let it lapse by the fact that he gave exemptions on almost everything, which was just ridiculous. But we have billions and billions of dollars coming in, and we have a very good relationship. I mean, we have a great relationship with a powerful country. And I've always felt if we can make deals that are good, it's better to get along with China than not. If you can't make the right kind of a deal, then not. Because, China, along with many other countries, they're not alone in this. They've ripped us off from day one. They've ripped us so much. They've taken trillions of dollars out of our country. And now it's the opposite. I mean, we're doing very well with China, and hopefully they're going to do very well with us. But I do think it's important that China and the U.S. get along, and we get along very well at the top.
This trade war, though, was hurting Americans. I mean, our soybean farmers, China had stopped buying the soybeans.
Yeah.
China was withholding these rare earth materials that you need for everything from smartphones to build submarines.
Sure.
What was the crucial thing? I mean, how tough of a negotiator is President
hurting,
Xi?
it was a temporary hurt. It was a hurt because I was taking in a lot of money from China. We were doing very well against China. And all of a sudden they said, we have to fight back. And so they used their powers. The power they have is rare earth because of the fact that they've been accumulating it and really taking care of it for a period of 25, 30 years. Other countries haven't. They used that against us. And we used other things against them. For instance, airplane parts. That's a big deal. They have hundreds of Boeing airplanes. We wouldn't give them parts. We were both acting maybe a little bit irrationally, but the big thing we had was tariffs ultimately. I said, look, if you don't open up, then what we're going to do is we're going to impose 100% tariff over and above what you're already paying. And as soon as I said that, they came to the table. We met in South Korea, as you saw. A lot of people watched, and we made a really good deal. And it was good for them also, I hope. I mean, I want it to be good for both sides, but we'll be taking in hundreds of billions of dollars in the form of tariffs. Tariffs are incredible because they really give us great national security. As an example, when they pulled the rare earth on us and the rest of the world, if we didn't have tariffs to fight back, I immediately instituted a 100% tariff over and above what they were already paying. And when I did that, they immediately came to the table. Without tariffs, we would not have had that privilege. We would have not have had that right. Tariffs give us national security and great wealth.
You talked about those rare earth minerals. Of course, my understanding is about 90% of them come from China. That's their...
Right now.
Yeah.
But within a short period of time, we'll have everything we need for ourselves. We've instituted an emergency program, and we will have... Within a year from now to a year and a half, we'll have everything we need, no matter what kind of a threat is made.
How? How do we do that?
Because we've taken over. First of all, you saw the partnerships we've established with Japan, with Australia, with UK, with just about everybody, frankly, and we're all doing it together. This wasn't a threat against the United States. This was really a threat against the world. So the whole world has come together, I think, at our behest. And rare earths, within 2 years, rare earths will really cease to be a problem.
The one thing that China wants, but it doesn't have, is the world's most advanced semiconductors.
That's right.
That's what the United States has. Will you...
Chips in particular.
Chips, that's right. Will you allow the chip maker NVIDIA to sell their most advanced chips to China?
No, we won't do that. But
it's not on the table at all.
We will let them deal with NVIDIA. NVIDIA is the prime company in the world for that. And we will let them deal with NVIDIA, but not in terms of the most advanced. The most advanced, we will not let anybody have them other than the United States.
Because then they would win the AI race.
Well, they wouldn't win it necessarily, but they would certainly have an equal advantage. Right now, we're winning it because we're producing electricity like never before by allowing the companies to make their own electricity, which was my idea, which nobody frankly had thought of. These massive plants that are being built are building their own electric generating plants along with the plant itself. And that gives them all the electric they need without going to an old grid that's, 150 years old. And they're making it themselves. And then they're selling back any excess electricity into the grid. So we benefit in all ways. But most importantly, it allows the companies to go immediately forward. We're getting approvals done in 2 and 3 weeks. It used to take 20 years. And we are leading the AI race right now by a lot. We are leading it by numbers that people have no idea. It's been really great.
Alex, I'm going to give you some room here to first comment on sort of this rare earths thing. I know that you focus on these storylines a lot more closely than I do. This is your domain more than mine, attention-wise. So your thoughts on what Trump was discussing with the recent agreements with China?
Yeah, I mean, I'll give what he said an informational content rating of, I don't know, 0. There's it's hard to know what's going to happen with the rare earths. Okay, by the way, for everybody who wants a general sort of outline of the problem, the rare earths are not themselves rare in the earth. It's not you can't find neodymium or whatever. The problem, though, is that China has invested over many years in the processing pipelines that are required to mine them. So when you pull out a piece of rock that has instead of like 0.0001 neodymium, it has 2% neodymium. That is still that is a huge concentration, relatively speaking, but it takes a lot of work to go from that to 100% neodymium, which you might need to make magnets or whatever to sort of release it into industry anyway. And those minerals are it's not just one, it's a bunch of them. And China has done a lot of work in sort of streamlining these procedures, and some say, and I think probably that's true, they run them dirtier than the U.S. would accept, right? Like some of those side products of these sort of reactions that you might need to use, or some of the chemicals you might need to use to pry the elements out of the ore are a little bit more questionable than the stuff we might allow ourselves to use and critically discard in the United States. Now you might say, well, if you're gonna then buy it from China, what's the point? And I agree with you. I'm just saying, some of the detractors say that China has done all these things, but the cost is accepting more pollution. Fine. Long story short, either through just focus or subsidies or dumping. Dumping means you release a large quantity of a certain thing in the market to bankrupt your competition. So I'm not saying that they've done this by the book or above board or whatever, but one way or another, they have dominated this space worldwide. Nobody, for a while now, I don't know if it's like a couple of decades, if it's more, people don't really tend to go in that market because they know that China will beat them either through, again, technical expertise or otherwise. The problem that creates is that now the U.S. doesn't have the know-how, the skills, the expertise, the pipelines, the supply chains, none of it. Japan is the one country that's done some work to try to recover a sense, some portion of their independence from China in that regard. And they're still not sort of, producing their own rare earths or something, but they've gone to, 30%, let's say, of what they make, right? It's a long and arduous process. I heard a data point just to give you a sense, and you might question it, and I don't say, take it as gospel, but somebody reported, Alexander Mercouris, who is at the Duran, reported today an email he got from an engineer. So this is, hearsay. But that person apparently was involved in setting up some of these processing pipelines for a particular rare earth, and it was a crash program and took 10 years. He might be wrong, this might be cherry picked, but this is the sort of numbers you hear, right? It really takes a while to be able to get to, serious volume with these things. So long story short, when he says, working with Japan, it's going to take a year, I don't put much stock into it. Unfortunately, the West has allowed itself to be put in a position where China has a big lever over them. And yes, while the West also has levers on China, what Trump didn't say, probably because he doesn't know it, is that NVIDIA was always allowed to ship some chips into China. But they're not selling any chips into China anymore. And the reason is that China has not banned NVIDIA chips. They basically say, we don't want them. So yeah, the situation is, I don't know, Gator. I mean, he said a lot of things, and this is sort of my very big, like zoomed out overview. I don't know if you want me to double click on anything in particular. I'm happy to, but this is my understanding of what I heard and what I know.
No, that's perfectly fine, because we're gonna be moving on to the tariff discussion a little bit more directly than the China specifically or the rare earths discussion. So thank you for just giving that high level view.
He went full Sagan, billions and billions. I don't know. What else do you want to hear?
Well,
Gator?
and my favorite phrase of his, numbers people didn't even know existed, or numbers people never even heard of, which is like, wow, I'm glad that we're discovering new numbers finally.
That was wonderful, because it was in regard to his lead in AI, and I've been sort of focusing on benchmarking AIs recently, and I'm like, what numbers? Like, what are the units here? What are we talking about? Well, so I guess in a way, yes.
So if it's one word that would definitely describe the tariff policy that the United States has had since Trump has come back into president, I would say that, clarity would be the best word to describe the policy. And, in support and furtherance of the clarity that has been occurring with the tariffs, here is the sequence that we are going to go down. So Trump, earlier today on Truth Social, posted, "People that are against tariffs are fools. We are now the richest, most respected country in the world, with almost no inflation and a record stock market price. 401ks are highest ever. We are taking in trillions of dollars and will soon begin paying down our enormous debt, $37 trillion. Record investment in the USA, plants and factories going up all over the place. A dividend of at least $2,000 a person, not including high-income people, will be paid to everyone." And now, I don't know where the trillions of dollars specifically is coming from, but the way that this is phrased, it sort of sounds like it is all connected to tariffs. And I don't think that trillions of dollars are coming in through tariffs, but some amount of money is being referenced with respect to the tariff policy, at least, as being a boon to the United States. And Axios here has from Scott Bessent, "Tariffs aren't meant for revenue and will shrink over time," Bessent says. "The purpose of tariffs is not to generate revenue, and their revenue-boosting benefits will eventually shrink as domestic tax receipts rise," Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said Sunday. President Trump keeps touting tariff revenue as a solution to various problems, even as the Supreme Court weighs whether the administration is using tariffs as an illegal tax. Just Sunday morning, he promised tariffs would pay down the national debt and fund a $2,000 dividend for Americans. Administration officials have frequently talked about tariff receipts of up to $1 trillion a year, offsetting deficits a decade from now. The tension about tariffs' true purpose was evident at the Supreme Court this week as government attempted to defend Trump's authority to impose them. Trump imposed sweeping tariffs under the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, a 1977 law that empowers presidents to respond to national security threats but never been used for tariffs before. Justices appeared highly skeptical of the argument that tariffs aren't a tax and don't have revenues as their primary purpose. If the court rules against the administration, that would toss potentially hundreds of billions of dollars a year in revenue out the window. Over the course of the next few years, quote, over the course of the next few years, we could take in trillions of dollars, but the real goal of the tariffs is to rebalance trade and make it more fair, Bessent told ABC's This Week, touting the eventual benefits of manufacturing reshoring operations in the United States. Quote, what would happen over time is we would take in substantial money as factories come back to the U.S., he said. Quote, tariff income will be substantial at the beginning. It will come down, and then domestic tax revenues will climb as corporate taxes go up, and all of these high-paying jobs are created. So if you're following that, Alex, somewhere along the line, we're all getting $2,000 dividend checks in some frequency, unstated frequency, once, twice a year, who knows, once for the rest of our lives. Unstated money will become ours because of tariffs, but also not because of tariffs, but just tariffs temporarily. So I hope you followed that. It was very straightforward, Alex.
Oh yeah, it was super clear, for sure.
Now, so
if I understand correctly, the president has a right to spend money for foreign policy, but not to make money. Is that the the punchline here?
Well, so there's been
losing be great, no problems. I'm half kidding. It's just that there's something really stupid about trying to delineate what is about revenue and what isn't, because surely if you make, some moves that make the U.S. a dominant power in the world, presumably revenue will come downstream of that. But apparently, if that is too direct, you're not allowed to do it or something. I don't know.
Well, as Axios stated, there's a Supreme Court case going on about this actual tariff policy. And the question about whether or not, as Axios alluded to, the question about whether or not the tariff is a tax policy or not has become very important. So the New York Times here has, did Trump's Supreme Court tariffs brief include a strategic blunder? In his public statements, President Trump has crowed that the vast sums of tariffs will raise about the vast sums his tariffs will raise. Quote, it will be a bonanza for America, he said in a social media post. Before the Supreme Court on Wednesday, his lawyer said something different. The tariffs were tools to achieve policy goals, said D. John Sauer, the Solicitor General. The fact that they raise revenue is only incidental. The key difference was legally significant. If the Supreme Court finds that tariffs are, at bottom, kind of tax, it is likely to rule against them since the Constitution gives Congress, not the president, the power to tax. If the justices agree that tariffs are diplomatic tools, they may sustain them as part of the president's foreign policy prerogative. Will the justices care about the seeming contradiction? In past cases, they have overlooked similar shifts, but legal experts said this time may be different thanks to how Mr. Sauer chose to present his case. In general, the Supreme Court places little weight on what presidents say in public settings, preferring to rely on the arguments made by the lawyers in court. The justices discounted, for instance, statements made by President Barack Obama about the Affordable Care Act and by Mr. Trump about his first-term ban on travel from several predominantly Muslim countries. But the disconnect at Wednesday's argument was more complicated than in the earlier cases, because in an unusual move, the introduction to the government's main brief quoted and so adopted some of Mr. Trump's public statements. Quote, 1 year ago, the brief said, quoting Mr. Trump, the United States was a dead country, and now, because of the trillions of dollars being paid by countries that have been so badly abused us, America is strong, financially viable, and respected country. The brief added, again quoting Mr. Trump, that the, quote, economic consequences would be ruinous were the court to require the administration to unwind its tariff deals. Jonathan Adler, a law professor at William & Mary, said that adopting Mr. Trump's statements in the brief changed the usual calculus. Quote, in effect, he said, quote, the government brief opened the door to considering the president's statements by including them in the briefing, and that may enable the court to consider the president's remarks when it would normally be reluctant to do so. The challengers, by contrast, referred to Mr. Trump's public statements only glancingly. The extensive quotations of Mr. Trump's statements by the Solicitor General may have been an act of client management to let the president have his say in his own bombastic style before getting down to business of actual legal argument, but the tactic may backfire. A spokeswoman for the Solicitor General's office declined to comment. The classical consideration of what a role a president's public statements should play in judicial proceedings is, quote, beyond the bully pulpit, presidential speech in the courts, published by the Texas Law Review in 2017 by Kate Shaw, now a law professor at the University of Pennsylvania. Professor Shaw wrote that courts should generally not hold presidents legally accountable for statements made in the public arena. Quote, binding presidents to their claims and representations has an undeniable appeal, she wrote, but for the most part is a category error for a court to give legal effect to presidential statements whose goals are political storytelling, civic interpretation, persuasion, and mobilization, not the articulation of considered legal opinions. Professor Shaw added in an interview this week that bad faith could make the president's statement fair game. Quote, I offered that framework, one that sought to give presidents leeway to speak to the public freely and often informally without constant worry that their words would imperil their legal positions. In the context of presidents who use the bully pulpit largely in good faith, she said, quote, when presidents stop doing that, as I think this president has, in my view, courts are entirely justified in using the president's words against them. The Supreme Court has generally been reluctant to do so. That was true in 2012 when the court upheld the centerpiece of the Affordable Care Act, Mr. Obama's signature domestic policy achievement. Mr. Obama has said the law's requirement that individuals get health insurance or pay a penalty was not a tax, but the court sustained it under Congress's power to levy taxes. It did not mention Mr. Obama's statement, though the justices were aware of it. Quote, is it a tax or not a tax? Justice Antonin Scalia asked Donald B. Verrilli Jr., Mr. Obama's Solicitor General, when the case was argued. Quote, the president didn't think it was. Mr. Verrilli responded, quote, the president said it wasn't a tax increase because it ought to be understood as an incentive to get people to have insurance. I don't think it's fair to infer from anything about whether that's an exercise of the tax power or not. Wednesday's argument in tariffs case featured a broadly similar exchange. Quote, it's been suggested that the tariffs are responsible for significant reduction in our deficit, Chief Justice John G. Roberts said. Quote, I would say that that's raising revenue domestically. Mr. Sauer responded, there certainly is incidental and collateral effect of the tariffs that they do raise, but it's very important that they are regulatory tariffs, not revenue-raising tariffs. Now, I want to briefly play a clip from the Supreme Court arguments. Now, the voice that you will hear will sound robotic, but it is not a technical problem on my end. That is the voice of Mr. Sauer, as referenced in the New York Times article. His voice, it sounds like he really needs several lozenges. And so the robotic sound of his voice is unfortunately just how he sounds. And I want to play this clip because it serves two purposes. One, it'll give you a little bit of context of the arguments that are being made in court. But two, it actually highlights something that I think few people respect, which is that even some of the more left-leaning justices, like Sotomayor, who is going to be in this clip, are not as wild and completely without constitutional context as often they're characterized to be. In my opinion, exceptions notwithstanding, the Supreme Court does actually stand to be a relatively coherent branch of the U.S. government.
Importation. You put those two words in combination. That's the inference from that is, the founders discussed with this sort of as everyone knows attitude. Regulate importation, one of the most natural applications of that is the power to tariff. So when Congress confers the power to regulate imports, it is naturally conferring the power to tariff, which it has delegated to the executive branch, again and again and again.
I'm sorry, counsel. It doesn't say regulate tariffs. It says regulate importations and exportations. You agree that they can't put taxes on exportations.
From the states, yeah, I agree with that, yes.
All right. So why should we think that it's natural then to think that regulate importation includes taxing importations?
Because it's
in the conjunctive, importations and exportations, if they can't do it with respect to exportations, why are we permitting them to do it with respect to importations?
Because as this court has recognized, going back to Gibbons against Ogden and going through McGoldrick and Board of Trustees, the phrase, when you're regulating imports, tariffing is a core application of that. So in other words, if you're saying go regulate trading in securities,
so why
that doesn't come with a tariffing
Congress,
connotation.
why is it that Congress has always used regulate and tax together in the code? Are you telling us that with respect to its use of regulate in other statutes, the taxing reference is superfluous? They didn't need to do that?
I'm not sure what other statutes use regulate and tax together, but this statute has a specific historical pedigree going back to its enactment during World War I in 1917, where the phrase regulate importation is evoking an inherent power to tariff that became established in the 19th century in cases like Hamilton against Dillon and so forth. And that history is, I think, set forth in Professor Baumsei's amicus brief.
Counsel. So I just wanted to play that clip. It's not going to clarify which way the Supreme Court is going to go. Now, some analysts are claiming their test of the wind, them licking their thumb and testing the direction of the wind, is that both the more conservative and liberal justices on the court are actually going to probably come down on the same side, which would be against the tariff policy, claiming that it is a tax that it is the Congress's responsibility to appear. I don't know if that's true. Of course, that's an opinion. It's not mine necessarily. I don't know, but that would be the sentiment that is being expressed in the media by analysts, which is that both the liberal justices and the conservative justices will likely come down against the tariff policy based off of the tax question.
First of all, I'd like to congratulate the administration for their work towards diversity by including a student of the RFK Jr. School of Logotherapy in their legal team.
Yes. That I don't know, man. Get that man a Halls. He maybe he had been talking all day and it was just the end of his rope there. But boy, that was difficult.
That was rough. Quite literally. I mean, no impact on his statements, of course. just having fun. But I have a solution for the administration if they would care to take it. They can just declare war on foreign goods and then use the authorization of military force that the Congress gave them a while back. And then problem solved, I think, or something. To declare trade war. That's it. Declare trade war.
Yeah, well, if the ACA's question where the politically speaking, going back to what the New York Times article is saying, I remember this case a decent bit. The president was calling it not a tax because politically speaking, during the campaign, the ACA penalty that you would pay or whatever was supposed to be called not a tax because raising taxes was supposed to be an anathema that was going to be politically non-tenable for Obama to do. So he would call it not a tax. But then the government had to try to argue that it was a tax during the Supreme Court arguments, going against what the government, the president's official political claim was, in order to try to say that that's why it was valid, because of they had this particular authority to tax that made it, constitutional. It was a very interesting, and it if my memory serves me, when in Robert's opinion on the court, the argument for why this worked was, so the idea was that, you either purchased the insurance on the market or you had to pay the penalty and get some government approved insurance. That the government ultimately had the power to do this, as sort of evidenced by considering it an inverse tax credit. So if you engage in an activity and you get a credit for something, you can just consider the level of difference between what is a credit and what is a penalty, just the basis, the basis level that you're considering. So, for example, if you don't get a credit, that is hypothetically equivalent to receiving a penalty, right? Like it was a total mental gymnastics thing there.
We're not taxing you. We're withholding your credits.
So yeah. So it's a, if you don't engage in the activity, then you lose the credit, even though you weren't being taxed this much and it's above your tax level. But it was the power basically. Look, as evidence, if you can give them a tax credit for for engaging in an activity, and you can take the tax credit away for not engaging in the activity, that's basically the same thing as making a penalty. It's just the basis level is different. So that was like kind of the argument for why that stood, and I was like, oh, okay.
Well, look, Gator, I think you're performing a public service here, because you're raising yet another little hypocrisy of the system, which is quite incredible if you think about it, right? It's like the courts are basically saying, yada, yada, I don't care what presidents say to the people, right? That's just, what was it, the bully pulpit? That's just stuff we say to the morons.
We are Americans, sir, and lying to the American public is a time-honored American tradition.
We're not about to start taking president's word. Did he even auto-pen that? I mean...
well,
come on now.
Just to comment specifically.
So basically, yeah, actually, come to think of it, that is true. The auto-pen has more legal power than what the president actually says.
Yes. The AIs already control us. The robots are already the controllers.
Quite incredible. It's wild, because you'll get into arguments with people on Twitter who, whose entire sort of shtick seems to be that, there's edgelords in podcasts who, use all sorts of psychological manipulation, but the government never does so. But, and the arguments they'll use, like what the president said, and here's the Supreme Court being like, oh, come on. Politicians say this darndest thing. We're not going to start deciding on that stuff.
I can understand. I can empathize and sympathize with the argument that arbitrary statements by the president should not be considered necessarily the official government position, and therefore the legally binding argument that they're going to make for something. I can understand that. But when it is the central argument that the president is making repeatedly, I feel that it should have a little bit more weight, right? It seems like a little bit perverse to have two different arguments, one for the public consumption and one for the private consumption that you actually perform in court, right? Like, it seems like they should all be considered, and you either have a clear argument that's correct, and that is the argument that you are making consistently across time, or you don't have an argument that's correct. It just seems like, because even if they win in the Supreme Court, they're still gonna keep the same public facing rhetoric, right? And that's just dishonest. We didn't win the Supreme Court because of this argument, but that's what we're gonna say to you guys, because we want to make sure that you take away a completely different opinion, because we want two opinions to be right, even though they're contradictory. I don't know if, Alex, we lost you here, or if you are still with us. But so I want to just quickly recap the Sotomayor clip that I played there to just focus on what she was, the crux of what she was asking. And that was basically, she was looking at different legislation where when the power to tax was included, the words tax were juxtaposed with the ability to regulate imports. And so the absence of the explicit tax was the weight of her question to the solicitor there. It was, so why did they leave it out here? What was that? And he was arguing that the jurisprudence and the historical precedent that preceded that law being made had a different sort of logic behind it. So the rumors are from people who claim to have their finger on the pulse here, think that we're going to get a 7-2-ish ruling by the court where the conservatives and the liberals are sort of in agreement that the tariffs are a tax and that only Congress has the power to authorize them, and that the president is exceeding his authority, but I don't know if that's true. We'll see, I guess, what that is. I don't know how long it's going to take them to rule. They may rule on that one pretty quick. Alex has dropped off. I've invited him back on. Hopefully he will rejoin us. But now we're going to move on to different aspects of the economy. We're going to play a quick clip from Trump from 60 Minutes again.
By the time we finish up, I think we're going to have over $20 trillion invested in the United States or to be invested in the United States.
How will that trickle down to the average worker?
Because of jobs, because they're building plants. We're bringing back the auto industry into our country. We lost 58% of the automobile manufacturing business to other countries. You know, we used to be the king of automobile and automobile manufacturing, and now we're not really the king anymore, as you know. Within a year and a half, 2 years, we're going to be the king again. We're going to, as an example, I was also in Japan, as you know, in South Korea. We had the biggest Japanese companies are investing billions of dollars of building auto plants in the United States. If I weren't elected, we would be losing all of these jobs. We would be losing far more of the auto industry. We would be nowhere in chips. Our country would have been bankrupt, and we would have had a bigger welfare roll. They would have expanded welfare and forgotten about everything else. Now we're building a country that's going to be so strong. I don't know if you saw the last numbers in terms of employment. They're all non-government jobs, not just government. Government jobs are easy. I could immediately do anything I want with government jobs. I'd just say we're going to add on 1 million government jobs, and you're going to say, oh, what wonderful numbers. They don't mean anything. We are building jobs at a level that nobody's ever seen before. But when all of these plants that are currently under construction and to be under construction, when they open, we're going to have an economy like our country has never seen before, the strongest economy in the world. We're doing very well. By the way, the stock market just hit, perfect timing for your show, just hit an all-time high. We're doing really well.
Can I ask you, Mr. President, on that point, though, when the stock market is doing well, that doesn't affect everybody. Not everybody's invested in the stock market.
It does.
But there have been grocery prices are up.
401ks, people have 401ks. Their 401ks are double what they were a year ago.
But for people that don't have 401ks or are not invested in the stock market,
but
they've seen their grocery prices go up, inflation.
No, you're wrong. They went up under Biden, right?
Now, in some of those comments here, Trump is saying the economy is great. Now, my understanding from what I hear is that people's personal sentiment is that it's not so hot. Nora O'Donnell, who's doing the interview, mentioned the grocery prices, and while I don't believe they have risen significantly currently, they are still high compared to where they had been previous to Biden and the pandemic scenario, and so the inflation that occurred there did not follow with relief to the purchasers, so they're still feeling the pinch, even if perhaps the level has not continued to increase wildly. But NPR here is the job market getting worse? As the shutdown continues, this is what we know. And Alex, we joked a couple of weeks ago that with the government shutdown, the BLS wasn't going to be doing the jobs reports. So the question was, well, how will we ever know if there's jobs out there? We joked about that a little bit, but the NPR is going to address that question more directly here. The government shutdown is making it hard to answer the critical question, how is the U.S. job market doing? The Federal Aviation Administration will reduce air traffic by 10% at many busy airports, the agency said Wednesday. The impasse in Congress over funding has delayed a closely watched report on the labor market for the second month in a row. Without the official jobs tally, the available signals are mixed. This week, a big payroll processing company reported an uptick in October hiring, for example, but a consulting firm that tracks pink slips noted a big surge in layoff notices. Policymakers typically look to monthly surveys from the Bureau of Labor Statistics for the broadest and most accurate snapshot of the job market, but BLS number crunchers have been furloughed for more than 5 weeks, so the September and October jobs reports have not been published. Due to the government shutdown, this is a challenging time to give an economic outlook speech, Federal Reserve Governor Lisa Cook told an audience at the Brookings Institution on Monday. The longer the shutdown lasts, the more data could be disrupted. But Cook insisted she and her colleagues are not, quote, flying blind. They look to private sector data for signals about hiring and firing, as well as anecdotal reports from a wide range of business contracts. Workers and people looking for work do the same as they form their own impressions of the job market, and there are signs of concern. A measure of employees' sentiment from the job search website Glassdoor found workers are less confident about the ability of jobs now than they have been in the last 3 months. Glassdoor users who received a job offer in October were less likely to turn it down than the previous month, suggesting that workers feel they have less leverage in the current market. October's decline in employee confidence reflected how quickly economic uncertainty can ripple through the workforce, said Glassdoor's chief economist Daniel Zhao. The government shutdown and mounting layoff fears have clearly shaken employee sentiment. A number of high-profile companies, such as Amazon and UPS, have announced widespread layoffs in recent weeks, which likely weigh on workers' confidence. The outplacement firm Challenger, Gray, and Christmas said U.S. business announcement plans to cut 153,000 jobs last month, the worst October in more than 2 decades. Tech firms and warehouse companies reported some of the biggest downsizing plans. Quote, those laid off are finding it harder to quickly secure new roles, which could further loosen the labor market. State tallies of new unemployment claims have remained relatively stable, however, suggesting that there hasn't been a big spike in overall layoffs yet. On the positive side, ADP, which handles payroll for more than 26 million U.S. employees, said it counted an increase in the number of private sector employees last month after 2 months of decline. Private sector employees added jobs in October for the first time since July, said ADP's chief economist Nella Richardson. At the same time, Richardson notes that hiring was modest relative to what we reported earlier this year. Official data from BLS had also shown a slowdown in hiring during the summer before the government shutdown halted its reporting. Employers added just 22,000 jobs in August, the last month for which official numbers are available. Now, if we recall, when we talked about the BLS numbers, those do come with a wide range. So the range there in that estimate actually could be fairly negative to decently positive. The 22,000 number is sort of, you can think of it as just as the average guess, and so that was kind of steady, I would say. Some of the drop in growth could be the result of having fewer available workers. Some 10,000 baby boomers retire every day, and the Trump administration's aggressive immigration enforcement likely means there's fewer foreign-born workers in the job market. A worker works on the roofing structure of a new home under construction Tuesday, July 15th. I don't know where that's... Oh, sorry, that might have been something I copied from an image on the side. I apologize. While the unemployment rate inched up to 4.3 in August, that's still quite low by historical standards. Quote, the slightly rising unemployment rate indicates the labor market is softening, but only modestly so, Cook said Monday. She cautioned, however, that unemployment rates for young and African-American workers jumped more sharply over the summer, which could be a warning sign. The jobless rate for workers aged 20 to 24 in August was 9.2%, while the unemployment rate among African Americans was 7.5. Quote, this is sometimes called a two-speed economy, Cook said, when the well-off are doing well while the lower-income families and vulnerable households are not. Now, a question that I follow rather regularly is the gas prices. I've been following those sort of automatically for quite a while, and so I will post to the feed the U.S. average gas prices by AAA every single day since Trump took office back in January. And the numbers there, at least as far as gas price affordability, are basically constant. They rose a little bit during the interim, but right now they are basically exactly where they were when Trump took office. So as far as gas prices go on the purchasing side for the consumer, they've sort of stayed identical. Alex, what has your sort of take been, your impression been on the state of the economy, given the tariffs, given the government shutdown, all of these things? Does it seem like we're in an expansion period, a stagnation period? What?
I would believe anything. Honestly, it's very hard to know. You know, on the one hand, you know, I heard that Amazon did a 30,000 employee redundancy.
Yep.
And I heard this because of somebody my wife knows, basically, you know, heard about the announcement. They thought, you know, I'm safe, whatever. And then, you know, their emails stopped working. That person was like working at Amazon previously, as you may be surmising. And, you know, then they just did one massive Zoom call with 13,000 people. That was the first batch. And they were all fired. It's you know, so and that's happened before with Microsoft. And, you know, I live in Seattle. So that's, you know, half of Seattle or something, affected by Microsoft and Amazon together. So there's definitely in the tech sector strange times, because you also hear about AI researchers getting contracts that the closest analog in the past is like NBA players or something. So there seems to be like a very wide sort of spread. Then there's the whole impact of AI in the economy, and I think that's going to be incredibly difficult to figure out. Andrei Karpathy is I think we've talked about him before here, but he's basically one of the original people at OpenAI. Then he went to Tesla, ran their self-driving department, because nominative determinism has to have a say in your employment.
I like him from afar personally, because he has a YouTube channel in which he sort of goes through in step-by-step guides to show people who might be curious about implementing some of the things that OpenAI was doing while he was still there, how they did it. When ChatGPT first came out, he said he actually started a series of let's make an LLM. And so I like him
he's
personally, because I like people who
very sharing of knowledge.
Exactly. I like him for that reason.
What is one of the for people who didn't catch my nominative determinism joke before, Karpathy, self-driving. Come on. Anyway,
I need to have a couple additional sound buttons for you so that we can have either like a bottom sort of thing or a duck quacking to make sure that we garnish your humor with appropriate.
But the thing is, he said something very interesting, which is he looked into the impact of other big technological shifts in the economy, like the internet, the personal computer, and there was no clear way to spot the impact. There wasn't like I don't know, some like elbow in the GDP graph or something where you're like, that's where personal computers were invented, right? It's just what you see is that the growth curve continues. It's like the thermodynamic destiny of America or something, So I don't think we'll see that anywhere. It'll just be the very fact of continuation of growth, despite all reasons to not have it. Some mysteriously that will be the effect. It seems right. And the reason I say that, by the way, is because I mean I hear all the time. I don't know about you or others. If you talk to professionals, they use ChatGPT and Claude all the time. So this is definitely having some kind of an impact, but it's just very hard to know how to place that. Like how do you spot that in the numbers or whatever, right? Or when they fire a bunch of people, is it because of AI or is it because of DEI or
Well, I'm not specifically even blaming. I'm not even specifically saying that AI might be related at all to a lot of these things. It's not. It wouldn't even be my assumption. Not that Doge has cut back a significant a lot of government spending, but to the degree that government spending has been cut back, that means that contracts that the government would have been funding have reduced, and therefore there hasn't been time to sort of reallocate, we'll call it the energy from that money, right? So if government contracts go down, that some places were fully relying on, those places now are non-existent. And while that may not be a significant amount of employment, that is now additional employees who need to find alternate places to work, or companies who let people go, and now they need to be reallocated somewhere. So there's always like a transition period whenever the government decides to stop spending money, which I'm always for, but that transitionary period creates a sort of lost in the wilderness type of thing, because sometimes the services that were being offered by people were only for the government's consumption. Right, they don't have an immediate replacement sector to solicit. But then additionally, the tariff situation, not only have the tariffs been high, they have also been absolutely confusing. and unintelligible for the most part, which there has to be some effect from the cost of trying to navigate for all the people who are involved in the chain of trying to allocate resources. Any supplier and any purchaser has to solve, small riddles as to where they're going to get, components or goods and from whom and at the best cost, and things that might have been more natural and more efficient at time periods is now an open question. And I think one of the things that have changed that has to have some effect is that there used to be Amazon used to have and China used to have sort of like this deal with the post office where they got like these extremely like cheap postal things to import from China, right? So which are like where the drop shipping business was huge or whatever. But I think that expired. Of the things I remember occurring in the last like year, I think that's one of them that expired. So now something that used to be more or less free, which was the postage from China to the United States. So now we have tariffs and we have increased postage, which maybe the increased postage was something that should have always been there. But the fact that it's now a change means that there's going to be some transitionary period where, things are modifying, and that can't affect nobody, right? Like for a period. So
there's only two. There's two universes, and you got to pick one. I think either the U.S. is not a serious manufacturing power, or the tariffs are having an effect, and it's hard to imagine you can have both. I think with the tariffs, honestly, there's a very disappointing turn because they started with at least a hope of a philosophy sort of being present, and they've been turned into weapons of foreign policy. He put some tariffs on Venezuela because he didn't like what they were doing with Bolsonaro. Now I happen to agree that what's happening in Bolsonaro is terrible, but our tariffs the way to solve this, I don't know. It's kind of hard to believe, that Trump just sort of announces tariffs in whatever country he's displeased with at the moment, and it takes away, I think, from the from any sort of coherent philosophical sort of motivation that might have been there.
Well, I've attached,
but unfortunately, I think that's how. Yeah, he gets manipulated. He will. Yeah. Anyway, sorry. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I'm just saying I attached a graph to the space here from a Washington Post article that I'm not going to start reading, but I did attach also to the thread, where it shows that if you were to talk about the cost differences, so groceries, like I said, have sort of stayed the same from the 2020 period. Where they did inflate heavily. And so my understanding reflects the graph there. And the overall inflation rate, the CPI, is sort of measured right there, supposed to be 3%. But a location that clearly affects people and clearly is rising according to the graph are the utility costs, which as of the last price point are up 11.7%. Now, part of that could be attributed to AI and increased energy costs. I don't know. I'm not solidifying that.
Did you know Trump invented the concept of putting a gas generator next to a data center?
What would we do without him?
Yes.
What would we do without that
ahead.
brilliance? The only guy out of 330 million people in the country, and then 8 million across the globe to have thought of that. Fucking brilliant.
Yep. It's crazy.
So, I mean, there's apparently a lot of least negative sentiment out there in the economy, and utilities. I do know sort of. I while I pay not tight attention, I do sort of roughly know that my gas and electric prices have gone up over time. So, I know that I'm paying a little bit more for it. So I don't know if other people are feeling that same pinch. I don't know how widely the utility costs are going up and how widely they're distributed. I don't know if it's regional where the average is rising, but it's not ubiquitous. I don't know. I don't have any necessary feel on that at the moment. If anyone wants to, request to speak and give their personal account, I'll be absolutely glad to hear it. And while you go ahead and do so. Alex, if you have closing thoughts on the economy, I want to get a couple small topics out of the way while we close out the show.
No, in general, it's going to be a confusing time. I think if we continue these conversations over the next couple of years, I think we are about to see things become really weird. I continue to track the whole sort of AI bubble narrative. If anybody's reading my feed, they know I'm very skeptical. Because on the one hand, yes, there are very, let's say, convoluted sort of funding structures being discussed for various things. But that is, I think, being overblown. What we just heard is OpenAI basically announced that their revenue run rate is going to be $20 billion at the end of the year. So basically, they expect 1.6 or whatever the 1/12 of 20 is $1 billion in revenue in December. Okay. Now, I looked how long Google took to get to that price in nominal sort of dollars, and this is very quick. I might be, off by a year or something, but it seems that Google.com took a decade to get there. ChatGPT seems to have gotten there in 4 years. Right. So there's something real happening, even by the most crude standards. But, at the same time, is it distorted? Is it distorting? Is it leading to job losses? Is it, how does it affect everything else? Another thing Trump mentioned in his, that little segment you had there was about energy generation. And while I don't think China will be dependent on the U.S. for silicon in the near future, I do think there's a massive gap in energy generation. So that's going to be, something to track. And overall, the question then becomes, how does all of that affect, everyday life for people? And that's the part where I think things are going to get even more confusing, because it's just, I wish I had something more, coherent to say, I guess, but I don't know. I used ChatGPT to do some yard work, right? To do some renovation of my front lawn, right? And I know for a fact that I would have paid a couple of grand to somebody to help me do it before, because I just didn't know how to do it, right? But and I'm sure that happens a ton, which on the one hand, again, means that this is a giveaway to everybody, right? Everybody gets to save money that way. I bet you if somebody sits down with ChatGPT and says, ask me 20 questions to find me ways to save money, go, right? By the end of those 20 questions, they will find a way to save money. Take me up on it, by the way. Tell me if you try it. But, that also means, broken windows that are no broken anymore, right? In a way. And I'm really worried that our numbers are going to be more harm than good in terms of helping us understand what's going on. Yeah, so I guess it's a very long-winded way of saying I don't know, and unfortunately, unless there's some breakthrough in our ability to understand reality, I don't think I will know.
Well, I'm not trying to make a conclusive declaration here, but broadly speaking, a bubble is going to occur when the dollars that are chasing investment are not focused specifically on real tangible valuations about the money that will be profited from those. Okay, now the housing bubble is a totally different sort of scenario where, yes, that was involved, but it was just a giant web. We don't necessarily have a giant web. If there was an analog, it would be the tech bubble. And the tech bubble from the early 2000s was primarily people wanting to, they didn't want to succumb to FOMO. They would invest in things because it was the hot thing. But the projects they were investing in, by and large, did not have any real strong plan to be profitable. Now, maybe a handful of these companies have strong plans to be profitable, but at the degree to which they are promising expansion, it might be a little bit of the cart before the horse, and therefore there could be a significant amount of investment which does not pan out and yield profits in the same scale, which means that therefore there would be a huge period of failure and sell-off and reacquisition before there was some equilibrium of true services offered for profitability. Like, I don't know, and maybe you do, but I don't know how much OpenAI is making per token on ChatGPT input and output versus how much they're spending on energy to produce those tokens. I don't know.
I will tell you, and this is really important data. There was a chart leaked that the venue called The Information, because they don't want to be Googleable, I guess, released, and it showed that both OpenAI and Anthropic are cash flow positive. Now, that doesn't really mean much, because I think, and I'm not that deep in accounting to sort of be able to opine what that means. But long story short, for important categories of expenses and and income, they're making more money than they're spending. The real question is, does this include all the data centers and whatnot? And all those big contracts, and
and that would also be a narrow statement about two companies, one of the largest players.
If you got two of the four big labs being cash flow positive, I think.
But it doesn't mean though that Pets.com of this generation that is also getting a lot of focus.
The other thing that I track is whose money is going into this, right? And by and large, the big spend in infrastructure is happening off of company balance sheets, right? Like, it's Microsoft spending their own money, Google spending their own money. At best, Musk is raising investor money, but that's still private VC funds that are have risk capital just to put to bets exactly like this. You don't see sort of stock market situations where something with not a clear business model is on a run and is now worth more than Ford or what. That's not what you see. So again, I remain skeptical on the AI bubble story. There might be a bubble in the future. You can definitely see the setup. I just don't see the actual there, mostly because the thing is real and works and is being used all over the place. So it's not real.
I am not solid on a specific AI bubble. I am certainly very open to the idea. I'm not claiming to have done enough solid research to have a settled opinion on the matter. I still have general concerns about the overall economic situation. But
I look forward to tracking this with you over time. I will tell you that we can talk about the 2000s or the 2008 crash or whatever, but I happen to have a different set of analogs, which is that when Amazon was in its growth phase and raising money that wasn't immediately translating into profit, or when Apple was doing the same, when Tesla was doing the same, when Google was doing the same, when Facebook was doing the same, you had a dedicated chorus of naysayers who were like, yeah, this is never going to last. Where's the revenue? You got to like, this is a very well-known pattern of people who just can't sort of break out of their Excel sheets, right?
Sure,
if an investment does not convert into revenue, like in this quarter, they start shouting about fraud and, a bubble.
Well, Amazon's always been funny.
To my knowledge, those companies just getting big.
Amazon's always been funny because it's always like traded at 150 times earnings, and it's like wait, well, why is it at 150 times earnings? That's just what people trade Amazon at. That's a unique place. You just trade at 150 times earnings. Everything else looks cheaper, but just trust us, they'll grow, and that's because they are shady as hell sometimes, and they will rent seek the hell out of places to make sure that they have what they want.
Yeah.
Well, now that transitions us into one final story, Alex, for the day. And did you know, by the way, before I begin this story, that this is our 1-year anniversary of doing the space? Because we began.
I did not.
We began right after the election in 2024. So our first episode was the day after the election, or not the day, but the Sunday after the election.
Well, I can say I've found them very entertaining, and I've learned a lot doing them with you. So thank you for your patience.
Well, absolutely. Thanks for continuing to join, and I we can keep this going. I enjoy doing them. Here's the final thing today. It actually transitions fairly well from what you were talking about. Companies spending their own money. Where did they get that money? Ars Textica, bombshell report exposes how Meta relied on scam ad profits to fund AI. Internal documents have revealed that Meta has projected its earnings billions from ignoring scam ads that its platforms then targeted to users most likely to click on them. In a lengthy report, Reuters exposed 5 years of Meta practices and failures that allowed scammers to take advantage of users of Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp. Documents showed that internally, Meta was hesitant to abruptly remove accounts, even those considered some of the scammiest of scammers, out of concern that the drop in revenue could diminish resources needed for artificial intelligence growth. Instead of promptly removing bad actors, Meta allowed high-value accounts to accrue more than 500 strikes without Meta shutting them down, Reuters reported. The more strikes a bad actor accrued, the more Meta could charge to run ads, as Meta's documents showed that the company penalized scammers by charging higher ad rates. Meanwhile, Meta acknowledged in documents that its systems helped scammers target users most likely to click on their ads. Quote, users who click on scam ads are likely to see more of them because of Meta's ad personalization system, which tries to deliver ads based on a user's interest. So there you go, Alex. Are you interested in scams? I am. I click on a lot of them. Well, here's some more scams for you.
Look, I mean, who are we to judge?
It is a free market.
I thought
supply and demand,
weird, but it seems people are into them. So I don't know. Maybe they're into scams.
So there's the end story. You had a beautiful, nice lead in from your statement there that they were spending their own money on AI, and there you go. Yes,
this is actually a good place to deposit a thought that I've had in my head for a while and shouldn't stay there. So here you go.
All right. Okay.
So do you remember when we were saying, before the whole AI thing exploded? People used to say, the brightest minds of my generation are finding more efficient ways to get people to click into ads. Had you heard things of that?
It sounds familiar. Yeah.
The thing I realized at one point is that, that ad money is what funded Google's research program that brought out transformers, and to some degree, probably more directly than you might expect. He might have been part of some of the ad-related research itself, in terms of correlation of patterns and whatever.
Sure.
And that's, it just strikes me that you just never know, how these things fall into each other. And I'm not saying that it's okay for Facebook to personalize your scams. But I just find it humorous, that's all.
No. I have a similar sort of thought that technology advances every so often, so that we find a new way to evaporate water to generate electricity, because electric generation is primarily just a process of water evaporation. Every single new way we come to it, even nuclear power, is just evaporating water more efficiently.
That's right.
So.
Yes. Your restatement of some thermodynamic law or other, but classic roller Gator way.
So that has been this dumb week. I will fix a couple of the blips where we lost connection, so that we don't have the podcast version of this with us trying to determine if the other can hear us. But other than that, this will be out shortly, and we have a decently regular size of subscription listeners. We have 13 reviews on Spotify, only 2 on Apple. So if you listen to us on Apple, please give us a 5-star rating so that we can beat Chelsea Clinton's podcast on that platform as well. Alex, I hope you and everyone have a wonderfully dumb week, and I will see you next Sunday.
See you next Sunday, Gator.